Hello, everybody. Maybe 10 people that watch this video, maybe none, maybe 100. Who knows? Maybe it'll be viral. My name is Cliff. I'm here with my friend Steve. I'm not really a musician other than trying to play guitar, and so I don't know as much about music as Steve does, my friend from 30 something years. We decided we both like Weezer. I want to try podcasting, so this is a great topic to rank the Weezer albums from worst to best. Steve, what do you say about yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I've been listening to Weezer since 1994. I saw Buddy Holly on MTV back when it first aired at my cousin's house because I didn't have cable growing up. So um they've just always been a band that's been with me, and I've always kind of been interested in their output. They were like really, really important to me, and like high school years, especially, like I started a band with Keith and Zach and a couple other people we know, and we were covering Weezer songs and writing music that kind of sounded like Weezer or Ozma and stuff like that. So yeah, and I haven't given up on Weezer like a lot of people have. I think that's a thing that
It's hard
I
not
I
to.
hear I hear from a lot of people, is just that, like, um, after uh after like Green Album, after Maladroit, like after Make Believe, like so many people just at any given point in their career have given up. I'd say the most people probably gave up after like the Hurley Death to False Metal era. But yeah, I've never felt like giving up. I always felt like it's like, even if the main Weezer output wasn't good, there was usually something else interesting going on with like one of their side projects. Like Rivers has had a lot of side projects, Pat's had a lot of side projects, like, and
Rentals.
obviously the old music doesn't go away either. So and while I may give up on certain artists in the way that, like, I don't listen to every new thing they put out, I never felt like Weezer was done being creative or interesting. So yeah, I've stuck with it, and this gave me an opportunity to go back to a lot of the albums that I kind of only listened to once when they first came out, and then just kind of forgot about it, or never wanted to go back to it. So, and also listening to them closer together gave me a lot more insight of how much I actually like each one compared to the others. So it helped to really like give clarity to my opinions on their discography and kind of where all the different albums lie and why. So it'll be interesting to talk about.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun listening to this too. Basically, I started liking Weezer basically from MTV too, just like
Mhm.
you did. Uh, you know, all right, let's begin. All right, nothing else to say other than let's start and rank them. What we're going to do is I'll tell you what my worst one is. You tell me what your worst one is. We talk
Mhm.
about it, see if we have different opinions or the
Yeah.
same opinions.
Mhm.
And we're
Yeah.
going to have to keep on switching the screen share. So
Mhm.
hope it's not awkward.
Yeah,
Well,
it should
which,
be pretty fairly seamless, but
yeah.
yeah, I think a lot of ours will match up, but certain ones won't. So it'll be interesting to kind of see where everything ended up in the end.
Well, everything will be all right in the end. All right.
It will.
So, first one I hate, well, the only one I really truly hate
Mhm.
is the next slide here. It will tell you in a specific daydream, okay, from
Mhm.
2017. This sucked. Man, I thought I just glanced at it for a second. I thought the girl on the swing was an astronaut. I just when I
I
looked at it, I
think
thought it
that's
was
what
an
it's
astronaut.
supposed to look like. Yeah.
I know, but like just looking at it for 1 second, you look away, you think you see an astronaut. It's a girl on a swing. I didn't know that
Yep.
until. So here's the story with my reasoning about this one. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, in 2021, I went back and looked at my Weezer collection, and I noticed I was missing one,
Mhm.
and it was this. Is this one? So I went to the store and got it from 2021. It was about 4 years old at that time,
Mhm.
and I shouldn't have.
I could agree.
Yeah, so what I did do was think about one decent half. I was trying to like it. I tried. I really tried to listen to it and see if I could find something about it that was cool. It's got It looks promising. The cover is interesting. It's got some
Yeah,
Japanese or Chinese on it, and
it's
uh
Japanese.
the,
Yeah.
the space, picture. So I thought it might be cool, but no. Mexican Fender is the only song that would have been a pretty bad song on anything else, but still listenable. And this one is,
Comparison. Yeah.
is the only decent song. It was the best song, and on anything else, mostly it would be the worst song. So,
Yeah. Right.
and the rest is just not it's not worth listening to. I just think I'll never listen to this again. If I
Hmm.
do, it's the worst so far. But if I do, I really can't remember anything else. I'm gonna look at my iPod here, just
Hmm.
have the songs list right here.
Yeah.
But what do I remember from this? Nothing actually. I can't think of a single song other than Mexican Fender, and that's a pretty bad low bar. And
Yeah.
if that's the best song, that's a terrible album. So just looking at it again, let's see if the song names ring a bell.
Hmm.
Beach Boys, Feels Like Summer. I don't think any of the
No.
I could not sing two notes from any of these songs, and
No.
I
Same. Yeah.
can't. And so what else? If I had to listen to it, I really did have to listen to it twice to make sure it was this bad. And I
Hmm.
did it on the way to work. I did it when
Yeah.
I got home, and I was like, am I missing something? No,
Hmm.
I wasn't. So maybe someday I'll try again, maybe to try to like it again and see if there's something that can see, I mean, make it a little bit better in my mind. But I really just, for now, I'm not going to do that. I'm gonna throw it away in the trash for now. So,
Yeah.
Steve, your turn. Which one do you think is the worst?
Let's see. So, um, my first one here, it is also Pacific Daydream. I just have some kind of basic notes, which was like, and like I've heard Rivers talk about this in interviews too, that like, and it's something he's done on a lot of their albums. This is going to come up a lot during this kind of conversation here, is like he goes through these periods where he just wants to try to sound like whatever band or artist is popular on the radio at that time. He just like, he thinks that, new music is interesting, and like, while I get the idea that you want to like listen or learn about new music, like there just needs to be a standard of quality, and I don't think he quite has that. I think he seems like he gets like overtaken with enthusiasm of like, oh, this is so new, this sounds fresh in some way or something, so I want to try to do that, but like it just does not work at all. And this was kind of his like late 2010s, like trying to ape off of like this kind of like guitar pop thing that was kind of coming out. Like I can't even think of what artists to compare it to because I don't care about any of them, but like it was music I would hear at like the grocery store, or not like Strax songs, but like a modern version of that, where it's just like songs you hear when you're out in public that you don't care about, you don't want to listen to. It's just you hear it and internalize it. But um
Muzak.
kind of, yeah. And yeah, the production here was just super boring, modern pop, again, like guitar pop production. It's super compressed to where like none of the instruments really stand out. They all feel like they're crushed into a blender. Like none of them have that cutting edge or treble to them like so much of Weezer's good music does. And the other thing I noticed, like as I was kind of researching it, is that most of this album was written by people outside of the band. And that is a factor on several of their albums, but with this one in particular, I'm pretty sure every song was co-written with somebody else. And while that might not always be a bad thing, because if you're writing with really good writers, it could be a great collaboration. But in this case, he was just writing with modern pop producers from the late 2010s. So it just all blended together. It all sounded the same. And it really didn't do anything to set itself apart from any crappy album you would hear from that era. And the only thing that really like made me pay attention and like actually want to listen to it more than once was the solo in the last song, Any Friend of Diane's. It has this solo that's in like the last 2 minutes of the song that's really, really good and has a really cool chord progression behind it. But that was the only thing on the entire album that made me like want to like rewind and listen to it again. So
Didn't
it
notice
was,
that song.
it was just, yeah, the rest of the song is really not very interesting. Like it's okay, just like barely okay, but it's super boring. But then when the solo comes, it totally changes the song. It goes into a different chord progression and it's really cool. But then that was like the only thing that got my attention. So yeah, totally forgettable. And I remember like hearing some of these songs leading up to the release, because like I would follow them on social media and Rivers would post songs early or they would release them on iTunes early or whatever. So like I would listen to a couple of them, like even from the early stage, I was like, none of this sounds interesting, but I'll give it a listen anyway. And I just never felt like it was worth my time. So I guess my initial feelings from those pre-releases were correct because it definitely did nothing to get my attention or stand out at all. So that's pretty much
Well,
it for that album. I don't know if I'll ever really listen to it again. I will definitely not go out of my way to do so. And I don't even think I want to own a physical copy, which I have most of their stuff on CD or vinyl, but
same.
this one's definitely a pass.
I do have most of their things except one thing that's not I don't have OK Human. I don't even know if they made a
Okay.
CD for that.
They did, yeah. It was only through their website though. I don't think it really came out to stores. Same with the Teal album. But yeah, we can move on to the next one.
All right, so the second one that I don't like that much here. Oh yeah, I forgot one thing. I wanted to show you this. All right, let me just a joke thing, but I forgot
Mhm.
about it. All right, so let me just go back to Pacific Daydream for one more second.
Uh,
Here, I made an emoji of sad face crying, and it has a beard. It's got a goatee, you see?
I
All
see.
right. The top of the head, the eyes, the
I
crying, the
see.
nose,
It's
the goatee, the
more like a
mouth.
goatee. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
All
funny.
right.
I just was playing around, right? But now the second one I don't like that much here is teal.
Hmm.
Couldn't think of another one that's worse than this other than Pacific Daydream. The reason why it's not bad, I would say Pacific Daydream's the only one that sucks totally. This
Hmm.
is all right. You can listen to it. It's okay. Pacific Daydream sucks. This one is fine, I guess. But here's why. It's good songs, right? You do like these songs.
Hmm.
However, they're not the first time you heard them. They're
Yeah.
not interesting to hear by Weezer. It's just standard. They didn't do
Hmm.
anything to change the songs. They just made them worse.
Hmm. Yep.
So it doesn't translate to a good album. So
Hmm.
um, like I said, the songs here are just too similar to the real versions. And if you just like the songs, go listen to them, right? I mean,
Yep.
they're not even hard to find songs. They're not rare. They're
No.
not like B-sides or anything. They're
No.
just plain old pop tunes from the 80s or
Yep.
maybe
Or
before.
90s. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or before. Yeah. It's just this. Yeah. Those 3 decades basically.
Yeah, so I say this album was never meant to be taken seriously anyway. As you see, they're dressed in like Miami Vice and everything. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, they knew that it was a joke. Here's the story. I think they just someone pressured them into recording Africa, and they just did, and then they decided let's just do a whole album of covers, and I think that's the story. Never planned to
Yeah.
release this. I think the fans just kind of demanded it. Um,
Yeah. It could be.
well, two highlights I'd say are Mr. Blue Sky, just because it's a great song. They
Mhm.
did a good job on that, and I like Paranoid. It was sung really cool from not Rivers, and I like that. It's a different
Mm.
sound. You hear the other guy singing, the guy in the pink, right? That's Brian Bell. So
Yep.
yeah, I don't know that he sings too many other songs, or even it's the first time maybe I heard his voice that I knew. Other times I'm sure he just sang background, but pretty cool. I mean, I like that he sang that. But the rest, I'm not too excited about it. It's a novelty anyway. So I mean,
Right. Right.
am I going to listen to it again? If it comes on, I'm not going to. If I put my iPod on shuffle and there's a song in here, I'll listen to it. But like, which one would
Hmm.
I like? There's some stupid choices here. I think No Scrubs sounds stupid to me. Like, why did they
Well,
pick that song?
I actually kind of liked it. It just in it that it was silly. Like Rivers, like feel like he wasn't really taking it too seriously, and he was using the original lyrics, which obviously are from a completely different type of person and a different type of perspective. It's from a black woman, not from Rivers Cuomo. So
Yeah,
like
that's why. I
it,
guess
and
it's funny.
it's interesting and fun in that way. And at least having the music updated a bit and played with real instruments as opposed to, being like an R&B track, at least that aspect of it is interesting. But overall, yeah, it's just not that great. Like,
Yeah, Africa. It sounds just like this song from Toto and
it's very close.
Sweet
Yeah.
Dream. That was questionable. Sweet Dreams. I don't know why
Oh
they did
yeah.
that. Take on
Yeah.
Me is pretty good, I guess. That one, they
Again,
did a
just
good
like
job there.
it does so little from the original. Like it just,
And then they totally botched Billie Jean. Like, why bother?
yeah, it's really bad. Yeah.
Okay, you
It's
can
definitely
share yours now.
okay. So my next one in order here was good old Hurley.
I
Um,
like it better than you, I think.
yeah, and it's it's one of those things, like I heard it when it came out and it sounded like way too much of this late 2000s sound that was like every other band that would come out and would be on the radio. They pretty much all kind of sounded the same. It was like the Killers and all these bands that tried to sound like them, and there was Jack White's other band, and then there was like um like the New Pornographers, Franz Ferdinand, like all that kind of stuff. And that's pretty much exactly what this album was trying to sound like. Like I had mentioned on Pacific, it's like Rivers is just like, oh, I really like the sound of these bands. Let me try and emulate that. But it just felt like almost every song sounds way too similar. Like same chord progressions, same drum beats, like same kind of vocal patterns. Like I said here, the production was just super boring, super just late 2000s pop crap. Again, also an album that was mostly written with other songwriters outside the band. So just Rivers trying to ape on somebody else's style or some kind of music movement that was getting popular in that time. Again, the production is just super compressed where nothing stands out. It has no edge to it. Um, there was only 3 like listenable songs for me. And
What is it? Memories, Ruling Me, and
it was
Time
Ruling Me.
Flies.
Um, Trying to remember. I meant to pull up the track list. Yeah, Ruling Me was definitely one of them. I think Unspoken, and then Time Flies, I
I like
think.
Time Flies, and it's a
Or no,
unique.
sorry. No, I didn't really care for that. The one that I do like is actually a bonus track, which is a track from Yo Gabba Gabba, that Rivers did this song with the guy from the Aquabats, who was kind of made most of the music for that show, called All My Friends Are Insects. It's on the iTunes version.
Yeah, I did
um
that.
but
I did.
and it's actually it's a kids show, so it's a song that's like kind of meant like almost like something like Schoolhouse Rock, where it's like educational but it's also like punk and kind of like fun. So um I really like that song, but like all the other bonus tracks were really lame. I don't care for Memories, and the lyrics on most of these were so bad. Like
Oh
they
yeah.
made me almost cringe. Like it was just
Well,
like, what are you fucking saying, Rivers?
I
Like
think a
this is
lot of
so
times,
stupid. Like
a lot of times,
um
Rivers just picks things that sound good together.
yeah,
Doesn't care about the meaning.
yeah, and like I've seen so many and read so many interviews with him, and he talks about that, where he does a lot of the time he does make the songwriting personal, but at the same time a lot of them, he said, on a lot of songs he just puts together pieces of things that sound good together, and like sometimes he'll pull out lyrics that he's had sitting in a book for 20 years and like throw it into a song now. um and it's just it's weird, and none of it really works that well here, but the lyrics specifically stood out to me as really bad and cringy on this one. And again, I don't know if he was just trying to sound modern or what it was, but like half of them, like they didn't even rhyme, they didn't sound good together, they just sounded dumb and like trying to get a reaction out of people or something. But Yeah, the Coldplay cover was also really dumb and boring, and it's a live recording also,
That's
which is weird. Like they just threw on a live recording at the end and didn't even call it live. It just says
yeah.
cover, and you can hear an audience cheering and stuff. It's like it's really weird to me, but
I thought
yeah,
the same.
not really a lot to like for on this one for me. There's not too many that I disliked more, but yeah, interested to hear what you have to say, but it when you get to it, but it's definitely not a favorite for me, and I will not really go out of my way to listen to any of it except maybe the Yo Gabba Gabba song that I mentioned, the Insects one, just because technically that was also released before this album and they just put it on the album afterwards. So but yeah, I think that's about all I got to say about that one.
All righty. Okay, what's my next worst? Number 15 out of 17 will be, see if you're surprised. It will be the Black Album. This,
Okay.
God, oh my God. I just thought at this point, because they had so much shit right before this, I thought, except 2017 was Pacific Daydream. The next one was this. I
Yeah.
thought, oh my God, am I not even a fan anymore? Like this sucks. And it's again
Yeah.
another album where they use different writers and they're just trying to sound poppy and current. Sounds
Yeah. Mhm.
terrible.
Yeah.
And
And
yeah,
again, like almost the entire thing was written with other people, just random modern music producers who don't have any stake in Weezer's sound or style or anything. It's just him wanting to work with a bunch of people who I feel like a lot of time he has no business working with them because they don't even mesh together. Their styles and their ways of writing don't work together. It's just a mess.
yeah. So I agree. There is yeah, exactly what I said. Too many guest writers that don't mesh with the music that Weezer does best.
Hmm.
I think you said it just the same as me. And
Hmm.
the highlights, I do think there's at least 3 songs. Can't Knock the Hustle is decent. I'm just being honest. I actually like that one pretty well, a lot actually. It's one of their um,
Mm.
top 50 songs, I would say. But they've got a lot of great songs, and more than
Uh-huh.
just 50. And Byzantine is interesting. It's not quite the normal sound. I mean,
Yeah, yeah. Byzantine had this weird kind of like Caribbean kind of sound to it. And oddly enough, it was actually written with this girl who is a kind of a famous songwriter from the band Against Me.
oh
And
yeah, oh yeah,
she's
she's a
actually a trans woman.
transgender. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, and they were just like kind of a pretty heavy like punk kind of sort of poppy thing. Um, but yeah, I that song stood out to me a lot. It just did not sound like anything I was expecting at all.
Yeah.
And yeah, it had this kind of calypso Caribbean kind of vibe, but very like electronic, I would say. That's how I would describe it.
Yeah, I remember liking it. I'll have to go back and listen again to see what you mean there about that. But
Hmm.
everything else is just,
Hmm.
it's only better than the Teal album and Pacific Daydream to me. So
Hmm.
I'd still say that Pacific Daydream is the terrible, only one that's bad, downright bad. This one is
Hmm.
still still worth having in my collection, I guess.
Yeah.
Because I'm a completist.
Yeah.
And not the worst, but overall pretty bad. It's bad for Weezer, not bad as in bad. It's
Hmm.
still, they're a great band, and even their crap is usually not that bad. All right. So
Hmm.
oops, I revealed something you shouldn't see yet. All right, your turn.
I
What
didn't even
else?
see it.
Okay.
So my next one is Death to False Metal. Um, so yeah, in general here, it's this isn't like a studio album, but it's a compilation of all kinds of unreleased songs that go all the way back to Maladroit, I believe. Um, and it's just a very strange like collection of songs that really don't fit together at all. They just don't really they don't mesh together, and most of them they all feel like they're missing something. Like I can see why none of these were actually put on the albums that they were supposed to be on, because they all just fall flat somehow. Like there's something about them that just doesn't work, or like didn't fit with an album at all, or doesn't fit with their style at all.
Are you saying
Um,
"Unbreak My Heart" doesn't sound like Weezer?
and yeah, it's like, um, yeah, also the songwriting, it's like on all of these, they all feel like predictable. They don't feel like Weezer. They feel really repetitive. Um, and there were a couple things that were okay. Again, like I said here, like the song "Everyone," it sounds like an early Nirvana song from like Bleach or something. It's just this really raw, weird, heavy song it is repetitive, like Nirvana was repetitive, but it has a character to it that makes it interesting. I think the way he sings, it's very like raw and very like, he yells a lot and screams, which he usually doesn't do. Um, and the Trampoline was okay, but also really repetitive. Like I think it only had like 2 riffs in it, and it just kept repeating them.
That's one
Um,
of the ones I actually liked on here.
yeah, and then "I'm a Robot" I think is my favorite one, because it actually just sounds like a Motown song. Like it's basically Weezer playing like, like a late 1960s Motown song. It's fun. It's got piano, um, and it just has an interesting kind of drum beat that's very like happy and poppy and dancey, I guess. So that one is definitely my favorite on here. The only one that I would actually like listen to and go out of my way to listen to. Um, so it's not a great track record. Again, the cover of "Unbreak My Heart" is just awful. Like I don't like that song anyway, but like hearing Rivers try to do it, it's like just don't. Just you don't
Yeah,
need to. And
you're
then
embarrassing yourself.
yeah, and the other weird thing was, yeah, in the bonus tracks, there's one that's sung by Brian called "Yellow Camaro" that's like okay. It's just also super repetitive. But then the iTunes version actually has an alternate take from the original recordings of the Blue album. It's an alternate version of Michael and Carly, and it's
Hmm.
super weird because it's like, why would they put a Blue album song on here? And it's just an alternate version. Like it's a really good version, but it's like, it just seems weird to throw it onto this album out of nowhere. And it just, yeah, again, by itself, it's like it's an interesting idea, but why is it here? That's like the
Yeah,
bigger question of all.
I didn't get the bonus tracks. I just thought it was too much bad to get bonus tracks from. And
Well, most of them are on YouTube, so I actually just kind of tracked them down there, or they're included on the iTunes version. So I try to listen to the bonus tracks for most of Weezer stuff, because there's some really, really good stuff in there, but you
they
do have
bury
to,
something on that.
you do have to dig a little bit. But so I'll be talking about bonus tracks on most of the
Oh yeah,
albums, if
oh
there
yeah.
are
I'm
some.
usually
So
with you.
yeah, so um but yeah, this one just, again, I think "I'm a Robot" is the only one I would actually go out of my way to listen to. The rest just falls flat in pretty much every way. So
It's funny though. I mean, what's this? What's this album cover? Is it people in a pumpkin patch?
yeah, so apparently it was supposed to be this thing, and it's funny because like the title, it's actually a joke that's taken from the band Manowar, because I think they had an album or a tour or something called "Death to False Metal," or a song, I think. And I think Rivers said like he used to say that with his brother when he was a little kid, and they would make fun of it. Um,
Yeah.
but the album cover, it's like, it it's either imitating or it was taken from some religious pamphlet of this like commune where everybody lives in this happy world and everybody's living off the land, and like a cult basically, like
Yeah.
like you would get a Jehovah's Witness flyer in your doorstep or something like that. So I think they said that's what they were kind of going for with that cover, because I was curious about that too, but I dug into it a little bit, and that's why it's like that.
Okay, then
So you can
I've
go on.
got something for you then here about Death to False Metal. I
Okay.
revealed it to my viewers here.
uh I did
One
not
viewer,
see it.
oops, I don't want to keep doing that, but I may have accidentally revealed more than I wanted to. But again, here's my 14th worst Weezer
Okay.
album. It's Death to False Metal, just like pretty much you like it one worse than I do. but
Hmm.
it sounds exactly like it is. It's an album of second-rate songs that they saved from the trash,
Hmm.
and
Yeah, that's
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 what
a
it
good way to
is.
put it. Yeah.
And so there's only four good songs that I thought of when I listened again here. Losing My Mind, Trampoline, The Odd Couple, and I Don't Want Your Loving. Now, I
Okay.
just out of those songs, since I listened about 3, 4, 5, 6 days ago, I
Hmm.
can only remember Trampoline
Okay.
because it's they just say trampoline a lot.
Yeah.
And yeah, Odd Couple, I sort of remember. But Losing My Mind. Okay, so these are forgettable. See,
Yeah.
that's my next
Very
point. They're
forgettable. Yeah.
forgettable, even when I know that I liked a few of them. A few days later, I don't remember them.
Hmm.
So that's what I have to say. It's still not even close to their worst album. I mean, this is far and away better than Pacific Daydream. If this was released in 2017 instead of the Pacific Daydream, if they switched places, I mean, I would have more hope for Weezer than in 2017 because
Mm.
in 2010 they were really yeah, they were doing stuff that I didn't really like and made me not as much as a fan. And then some other stuff they did later made me realize a lot that I was still a fan. And then
Yeah.
so yeah, it's just not really an album. I would just say it's
Hmm.
so does it count? I don't know. It's just tracks
Yeah.
that were never released.
Yeah.
They didn't go in and out, they didn't go in into a recording studio and say let's record Death to False Metal. That's not what
Yeah,
happened.
and yeah, and the thing was like the original name for this album was Odds and Ends, which I
Oh,
feel like that would have even been a better title because then it's like you at least kind of know what you're getting into. You know that it's not a new album that they went into
yeah.
the studio and recorded, you know.
Yeah,
So like
misguiding. And the metal thing, people might think this is their
yeah,
attempt at heavy metal.
exactly, right. I think it's very misleading. And again, the title is kind of a joke, but it's still like
Nobody
it
gets
just
that joke though.
exactly except them. So, and granted, it's their album, they're the creators, but I feel like having a better title could have at least gotten it a little more positive attention in some way other than the one that they chose. So
Yeah, it's sort of
it's
like they played it off as a real album when it's just recordings from left around. I don't know. To me, well, it's cool to hear. It was cool to me though to hear what doesn't usually make the cut. I mean,
Mhm.
it's like a convenient little album that has about 10 songs or so of stuff
Mhm.
that they would have never released. So you get to, it's kind of like the hardcore Weezer fans that dig for this stuff online.
Yeah,
Here it is right here. You can buy it at the store.
yeah, this was just before Rivers started putting it all up online like like he has recently. um and it's like he kind of started doing a little bit of that stuff even back on like the Green album, because there's like over 100 demos for the Green album that they never used because that album took so long. But like this is, yeah, this just felt like trying to recapture that kind of thing of like you said, like digging for like the hidden songs that never got used and stuff like that. So um and I remember that these songs actually do go all the way back to basically before Pinkerton. So like between Pinkerton and Green album, um, everyone, that song I was talking about that sounds like Nirvana, that was from like in between Pinkerton and Green album, like during that weird period. So it just yeah, and that's the other thing is like the songs, the production sounds completely different on all the songs because they're all from different recording sessions from different albums. So they had completely different sounds, different producers, and all that stuff, for each one of the songs on this album. So they just don't fit together at all.
That's what I think too. All right. So one thing I will say is when I heard it in 2010, I thought, God, they suck. These songs are terrible, and I don't know if I did or did not know that this was just loose ends back in 2010. I don't know. I
Mm,
can't remember, but I remember I didn't think it was good. That's all I remember. So,
yeah.
all right. So then now your turn.
All right. So my next one, not too far off from yours, is going to be Black Album. Again, I just really did not like very much on here. It looked like and Rivers talked about it beforehand as well, that he said it was going to be like one of their darkest, most experimental albums. And I was like, I don't know, if that's really going to turn out too well, but
It's definitely not.
it didn't. But yeah, again, I noticed a lot of inconsistent production, like I was just talking about with Death to False Metal, that every song almost sounds like it's by a completely different artist, but like most of them just aren't good at all. But most of them are also trying to mimic music that was popular in the late
All
2010s.
out the
Like,
way.
yeah. So the main song, I think the best one on here is High as a Kite. I don't know. And that was the one that one of the ones they released beforehand. So like I actually had a little bit of hope for it at first when I heard that song. I was like, oh, this is actually like good. I like this. But none of the other songs are even close to as good as that for me. But the other one, I'm Just Being Honest, like you said, that was
I
another
like that
one
one.
that stood out, and a Byzantine. So those are the three that actually kind of stood out to me. High as a Kite, I like genuinely like and can listen to like all the way through. And I did listen to it several times when it was like the pre-release before the album came out. But the other thing I noticed in general was a lot of down tempo, slower tracks that were mostly kind of sad sounding or just kind of sludgy. Maybe that's kind of where the album cover idea comes from. But yet they're also trying to be poppy. Like the whole thing, just nothing
Yeah,
really
this
clicks
match.
together. Yeah.
Which mood you going for here? You
Yeah,
know?
it's like it changed every song. It would be a completely different mood or style, but none that sounded good. Yeah, and again, pretty much mostly forgettable besides those three songs. And I had to make a note of how awful Rivers trying to rap on California Snow is. I couldn't
think
even listen to more than
I
half
think
of it. I
that's a
had to shut it
repressed
off. I
memory
was
for
like,
me.
just stop. Like, and I mean, we'll get to more of that later because it's funny because like this was like in the 2010s there was this period, especially in the early 2010s around like Hurley, like Rivers was like doing guest appearances on like rappers albums and like stuff like that, and there was some really good songs that he did with some of these artists, but like him trying to do it himself, it's just like, just stop, man. Like just let it go. Like,
Yeah.
you're not a rapper. That's fine if you want to work with rappers, but just you don't need to do it yourself. Like, um
Stick
so
to what
that
you're
was,
good at.
yeah. And again, it's not like you can't experiment, but have standards for yourself.
It seems like they just release anything and they don't hold back what they record, they release. It seems like they need to sometimes have a filter, but
Yeah, there's definitely almost no filter, and it's weird that their record company lets them keep doing this, but I mean,
they're
something must
yeah,
be working somewhere that they
they're
can
a
keep
cult.
doing it.
I mean, they cult hit, they've got a
Yeah,
cult following. I mean, so the people that are gonna like us gonna buy their
yeah,
CDs no matter what it is.
yeah, they have a baked in fan base that's generally not really gonna leave, but
The last generation of people that bought CDs, that's basically who it is.
yeah.
That's
And I
us.
mean, and again, it's like I don't want to give up, but sometimes they're pushing us pretty hard, to be like, why do we listen to them still?
Because
But
every now and then, like they
exactly, yeah.
surprise
Yeah. So yeah, we'll get to that more later, but that's about it for the Lack album. I won't listen to anything besides those three songs, like for even a second. I would not go out of my way, but
you.
that's pretty much it.
All right, now let me make sure I don't reveal the next one here. Yes. Okay. Did I? I'll add it. Let me see. Okay, hang on. All right, I might have to show. I'm not sure how to not do it, but okay, just don't look. All right, here it is. Early, number 13 for me from 2010.
Mhm.
Now, here's what I think. It's not that bad. It's not the terrible. I mean, I would say the only terrible one is Pacific Daydream. So back in 2010, when they had, I don't remember which was first, maybe Death to False Metal was first, or was it this? Because they were both released in 2010.
This was first. I want to say this was in March, and then False Metal was October, if I remember
All
right.
right. So two disappointments in a row. I was
Yeah.
at a low point for Weezer fandom back then, right?
Oh yeah.
Oh
Mhm.
my God. So, but there's three songs. I like the first three songs. Memories, Ruling Me, and Trainwrecks. Those are
Mhm,
great. I mean, they started off solid. And then
mhm,
there's actually three more decent ones. Brave New World, Hang On, and Time Flies. I like
hmm.
Time Flies like a kind of like a campfire song, you know?
Yeah,
And they
that's
got
so
these,
weird. You like totally different tracks from me, except for Ruling Me, we both agree on. But
oh yeah.
yeah.
But
Hmm.
what else? Didn't think much else was very good. I mean, skip them on if they came on, I would skip them. All right. So that anything from Hurley that's not these six songs, and what? Yeah, again, what I said is the same as what you say on the bonus. One of the bonus songs, not on one of the bonus songs. Made a mistake. One of the bonus songs is "Viva La Vida," a Coldplay cover, and why? But it's not that great. It's not bad. It's kind of interesting, I guess. You know,
Yeah.
bar
Again,
kind
I
of
yeah.
tunes.
Yeah, I don't like the original song, so like it just in general it doesn't work for me. And the fact that it was a live recording just really made me just
Yeah,
like make my head spin. I was like, why?
I think it was a pretty current song at the time.
It
Not a,
definitely was, yeah.
not a Coldplay fan, but I heard that song before. I mean,
Mhm.
one of the songs that I actually know the name of by Coldplay, even though it's not even in the song, right?
Yeah. Oh,
Anyway,
mhm.
do I have anything else to say? Yeah. Well, I thought I hated this album. You know, when I was going to listen to it again, I thought this would probably be last place or second to last.
Mm,
But it's 13 and they have 17. So
yeah,
it was surprisingly better than I thought.
yeah.
So and this
And
guy here, who's this guy? I've seen the picture. The cover is him
yeah, he's an
hugging
actor.
Rivers.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. He's from that show Lost.
Yeah, I
Apparently
never
Rivers
watched.
just got super obsessed with that show around the time. So once again, he just goes off on this emotional tangent of like everything has to be about this guy right now. Like, and I'm pretty sure that character died in like the third season of the show or something, and like everybody was pissed off. But like, and the show went on for like 7 seasons or something. But
Yeah.
it's a weird thing.
I seen him in a episode of Curb Your Enthusiasm. He was playing a drug
Mm,
dealer. That's
mhm,
where I know the guy from. But
interesting.
I didn't watch Lost. Not
He
even
actually looks
once.
like a more Hispanic version of Wolfgang von Halen, Eddie
Yeah,
Van
I can see
Halen's
it.
son.
Wolfgang is
Mhm.
kind of fat and he's
Yeah, and
got the
yeah,
same look.
now he's rocking a beard, so and like kind of long hair. So I just saw a video of him the other day from that Taylor Hawkins tribute concert thing, and I was like, he does look like that the Hurley guy.
Looks like the Hurley guy. This guy is not an a lost actor. Now he's the Hurley guy.
Yeah, kind of. Well, Hurley's the character's name, but yeah,
Oh, okay. Oh,
from
okay.
Lost.
Well,
Yeah.
Hurley is to me the name of this album, not the name of this character.
Yeah,
So
right. But it's probably the opposite for most people because that show was so popular back then that most people are just like, hey, why is the Lost guy on this album? Like, is he singing on this album?
oh
Because
God.
you remember, like, this is the album cover. Like, if you go to see, like, you buy the CD, it actually has a sticker that says Weezer at the top. It's not actually, the name Weezer is not actually printed on the cover at all.
I don't
This
remember.
picture is just the cover. That's it.
I bought it in 2010. Don't remember the rapper and everything.
Yeah.
Okay, so your turn.
Okay. Um, Next for me is the Teal album, which, like, again, like it feels weird to put it this high just because it's so underwhelming, but I just feel like all the ones below it were even more underwhelming for me. So um again, it's just a very kind of barely passable collection of covers. There's only 5 of them that I even have like any inkling to listen to at all. But like you also said, most of them feel kind of pointless and too close to the original. Granted, like they can still sound good, but it just makes you question, like, why did you do this? Just
Yeah.
because Rivers wanted to record himself
I
singing that song, I
I would
guess. Like,
really like to hear songs that deep tracks from different
mhm.
people that you think, maybe you didn't hear the original yet. Then you
Mhm.
want to go back and look it up.
Yeah, and again, like that's kind of what I said here is like it feels lazy because so many of these songs are just like the most popular songs from all of those bands or artists. And most of these songs were like still being used in like TV shows and movies and video games. And like these were already still like current songs. But again, I think that's kind of where the whole concept of this album came from as a whole was that it was just like chasing memes, basically. Like Rivers got on this whole thing of like just being obsessed with memes and like what they mean to our
Oh
culture.
yes.
And that's where the whole Africa thing came from, because there was just this huge internet outcry of people like begging Weezer to cover Africa, and then they like trolled people at first by releasing
Right. Yeah,
Rosanna,
Rosanna.
yeah, which I think is actually a better song. And I was like, that's really cool. But then like a month later, they released Africa, and it led to this whole thing because it got Africa got so popular. I think they just again they realized, and they probably convinced their record company of like, hey, let's just make an album of covers of songs that are still memes, basically. um, Even though they're from the 70s or 80s or 90s, um, but they still have some kind of relevance to where, like, for whatever reason, young people will still listen to it. Um, and again, that was also right when we started getting deep into the whole 90s nostalgia wave that was like washing over all kinds of entertainment. Like all these retro 90s TV shows were getting revived, and bands were getting back together from the 90s, and just all this silly shit that people
Yeah.
get wrapped up in. So I think it was so much of this album, even it, the reason it even exists was just because of its timing, and that it was just trying to cash in on meme culture, essentially. Um, but the other stuff I mentioned here was the production was inconsistent, um, which makes or breaks some of the songs, because some of the production is just so boring and so lacking in any kind of interesting sounds or production that like it just made me feel like, why am I even listening to this? And then I think Mr. Blue Sky is the most standout thing on here,
Yeah.
besides it just being one of the best songs on here, period, from a writing standpoint. I mean, a lot of Jeff Lynne's stuff, especially from that era, is just some of the best music that's ever been written.
Mhm.
And I think at least Weezer's version, it added the heavy guitars towards the end, which I think made it even more like emotional, and like it just hit even harder than ELO towards the end. And not that I'm saying the whole song is better than ELO's version, but that part, it really like hits. It's just like, oh shit, this is Weezer. Like it's finally kicking in. There's those guitars that I hear on, all the albums that I love from them, but they're covering Mr. Blue Sky. It's like that
Mhm.
moment just hit me as really cool when it comes up towards the end. Um, but most of the rest is just very whatever. And I actually don't like a lot of these songs, even their original versions. Like I don't like Everybody Wants to Rule the World. I don't like Sweet
Yeah.
Dreams.
No,
Um,
I
you
don't
know,
either.
in the other ones are either, like the ones that I kind of like is Africa, because it's like it's Africa. Um, you know, and I like the original Take on Me, but I just don't think they did anything interesting with it. It was kind of cool that they did the Turtles Happy Together. Again, it's a great song. The original version's great, and there's just sounds okay. It just sounds like a rock band, a modern rock band covering a 60s song. I did not like Paranoid. I do not like how the guitars sound, and I don't like how Brian sang it. Um,
Well,
but
I,
again,
I
like,
liked it. I don't know.
yeah, and again, like I did like No Scrubs, did not like
Oh,
Billie Jean, and Stand By Me. It's just one of those things, like it's okay, and I like that they did also bring some heavy guitars in a little bit later into it, and they had a lot of strings and stuff. But again, it just felt like, why listen to this when you still have the original? So
yeah,
yeah, that's
same.
that's just kind of the nutshell for this album. But yeah, so I ranked it quite a bit higher than yours, even though I don't think it's great. It's just,
No.
it's there. I had to rank it somewhere, and I liked at least a couple more songs than all the previous ones. So
Okay.
that should be it for Teal.
All right, let's see what I got here. Next will be okay. Human, that is. All right, so okay, Human is my number 12.
Okay.
If you're watching the numbers. All right. Now,
Hmm.
I think this is a fine album. It's fine. I like it.
Hmm.
Every song is, passable. I
Hmm.
like it. It's just not the mood I want, maybe usually. It's
Yeah.
symphonic, right?
Hmm.
So Do I listen to classical music more than rock? No. So I mean, this
No.
is no exception. So what else? I think it's good, not great, solid, but leaves something to be desired. I was never satisfied really with any song, right? It never
Hmm.
just scratched that itch to me. I don't
Interesting.
know.
Like I'll talk about it more when we get to it, but like what it's doing is it's trying to make an album with this style that got kind of popular in the 2010s, that's usually called chamber pop, where it's music that is like pop music, but it's just done with a very small orchestra, essentially. Like, it's not like the London Philharmonic Orchestra. It's like 4 or 5 people with string instruments basically playing along with Weezer. And there was some bands like in the mid to late 2000s and the 2010s, there are bands that kind of have this as like their whole sound. But this was just Rivers' kind of take on it. But
Okay.
yeah, just wanted to kind of throw it out there that like it does fit within a certain genre, and I agree that it's not particularly what you expect or want from Weezer, but it is a thing again where he was trying to sound like other artists that he likes, basically. So
I guess I never got it. But anyway,
mm,
favorite songs, I remember the ones, these ones for sure. Bird with a Broken Wing, Here
mhm.
Comes Rain, Playing with My Piano. It's funny, he mentions Kim Jong-un in Playing with My Piano. I think
Yeah,
that's
I really like that song. That's a good one. And it
funny.
changes a lot in that song. Like it goes from different recordings of him, like different demos almost, and he's like piecing them together as the song goes along. It's kind of cool. It's kind of
Yeah,
proggy,
definitely.
I
It's
guess.
it's the probably my favorite on this whole album
Mhm.
out of these.
Yeah.
Even yeah, I mean, so what do I also think? Now, here's when I would listen to it. If I was driving to somewhere that takes
Mm,
31 minutes to arrive, which
yeah.
is how long this is, I looked. I might listen to this if I was in the mood. So other than
Yeah.
that, if I just wanted to hear a song from Weezer, I'm not going to go to this album, no matter what.
Okay.
It's good, but really I don't like the whole symphonic. There's not I can't
Okay.
even tell if they use guitars, maybe acoustic
It's
guitars.
acoustic. Yeah.
Okay, so
It's usually there. I mean, certain songs I think don't have guitar because it's replaced with piano basically, but Um, I just can't remember the specifics of every single song, but I know that, most of them do have guitar, but there's a couple that I don't think have guitar.
I will say that it's interesting,
Hmm.
but not as good as regular Weezer, I think, on
I see.
average.
Hmm.
So the good songs are only slightly better than the other ones, though. So I think they're all good songs.
I
But
agree. Yeah.
the good songs, the great songs, great songs for this, not great songs overall, but the
Mm,
top three here are only just this much better than all
I
the
see.
rest. And so I just think it's an enjoyable experience,
Mm,
but you know, it's classical music. So to me, I mean, it's like, do I want to listen to classical music or do I want to listen to Weezer? It's not both. I don't
why not
I
both? Yeah. Right. I think that was, part of the idea is like,
yeah.
and again, it's not necessarily classical music. It's pop
I
music
get
with semi-classical arrangement, but as a whole, obviously we'll talk about it later, but Seasons is much closer to classical music in a
Well, yeah,
real
because
sense,
Vivaldi,
but
they made a
mhm,
song for every one of the four seasons from Vivaldi.
more or less, yeah. But we'll talk about that later. But yeah, I think, obviously I like Okay Human more than you because it's, later on my list, but we'll talk about that more later.
Okay, your turn then.
Okay. Um, my next one is Make Believe.
Okay.
Um, this I really did not like this album. And I never did. I remember being in college when it came out, and it was after, a couple years of them not doing anything.
Oh yeah, I know this
And
exciting.
like in 2002, like I loved the hell
Oh,
out of Maladroit. But then
that was
it was just like a couple years where there was just like, what are they going to do next? Like,
yeah.
are they
I'll
going to
say
get better than this? Are
hang
they
on.
going are they going back to how they used to sound? Because Maldroit was a little closer to like Pinkerton and Blue kind of sound, but when this one came out, like I remember getting an early release of it like this was when, you know, internet sharing was just like everywhere. And like my roommate in college had gotten it like 2 weeks early. That was actually one of the things that me and my roommate in college got along with the most was music. And I think Weezer was one of the biggest things that we kind of like became friends over, you know, that we would talk about them a lot. And you know, we were both so excited for this album, and then we got it, and I was just like, did we just listen to this? Like was this just as bad as we thought it was? Like um
Yeah, it's
and,
pretty
and
emo.
yeah, and it was just more of a shock because the 4 albums before it were all good in their own way, and then this was just like, what in the hell are you doing? Like
Yeah.
it just, the whole thing. And I think one of the worst parts is what I mentioned here is the production. It's by that guy Rick Rubin, who produces a lot of like rap
Oh,
albums and like popular rock albums from the past and stuff, but like the production just sounds so flat and so boring. All the guitars sound so processed and compressed, and they don't sound like the heavy Weezer guitars that you want. It just sounds like they're trying to be a crappy pop rock band. um and again, there's only like 4 to 5 decent songs on it, but none of them that I would call great. um and I think this was the start of where their lyrics truly got lame and boring and generic,
oh yeah.
where they
Never.
started feeling less personal. It was just corny crap. And like maybe there was some personal elements in them, but the way that he was expressing it, it did not feel genuine at all. It just felt like
Yeah.
trying to put together some crap that would get people's attention, or you know, it really felt like it missed the mark in pretty much every way. I think um I think over the years my favorite song of all of them is Hold Me, which is one that I never hear anybody talk about.
No,
um
yeah, I can't think of it.
okay, yeah, like it's a very, it's simple in its writing, but the way it's recorded and the power it has and the dynamics it has, because the choruses are all like clean guitars. But then when it bursts into the chorus, it just becomes this really loud, like emotional chorus. And I really like the melody.
Oh,
Um,
I remember the song now. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, so that's my favorite on here. Most of the other ones honestly just don't do much for me. It's like Beverly Hills, Perfect Situation, they're like okay, like whatever. And then there was like one or two others that I can't even remember the freaking name of because I'm just generally so bored by them. um that were like the only ones that were kind of okay to listen to, but like truly nothing here besides Hold Me even comes in the same galaxy of any of their previous music before this.
Oh yeah, the
So
first
it,
one.
it just, yeah, it just nothing. Again, it set a bad precedent that it was their first truly
Yes, it
lame
was.
album for
It
me.
was
um
the
and it
fifth one. The
has,
first,
yeah,
not that
it,
good.
yeah, and it has remained lame through all these years. It has not gotten better with age. It's just always this boring slab of crap that they released in 2005. So
I
uh,
I think it's not as bad as you say, but I agree sort of. I got
yeah.
it on my list as the next one.
Okay.
But
Well, yeah, I think that's about all I have to say for it. It brings up, I guess, a little bit of a bad memory of just how disappointed I was when it came out because,
I
again,
feel
like
the same.
I was in a band with my friends who like worshipped Weezer, and we just thought so much about, you know, so well about their music that we would even create our own band to try to sound like that. But then it was like this was just like, what the
A
fuck?
betrayal.
Like do we, yeah, it's like, do we make a mistake? Like were they actually bad and we just didn't notice? But no, this album is just bad. Like so
Well, they redeemed themselves.
they did eventually. But yeah, that's about all I have to say for that.
Now I'm going to talk about the same thing here. My list is number 11, Make Believe. All right.
Okay.
So what I say is Beverly Hills is decent. It kind of reminds me of the song I like. I love rock and roll. It's like a
It
Nick
is,
Lover.
yeah. I mean, it's just like try copying it but
Beverly
changing the chords.
Hills.
Yeah, the rhythm is so similar. Yeah.
Yeah. That's just what stuck out to me when I heard it again. Yeah, basically it is that, I think they
Yep.
probably heard that song as a prototype. I don't know. And then it's too emo. I can't,
Mm,
it's too sad. What are they going
yeah,
through in this time here? And what is
yeah,
Rivers going through?
and like I don't know, like emo as a term is such a weird thing to pin down because it can mean so many things to different people. So like I don't exactly know what context you're using the word emo in. Um,
I think
but
if you
it
listen to
definitely,
this, you'll know what I mean.
but yeah, it has that, it feels almost whiny, like
Yeah, that's what
like
I
it,
mean.
and not just the vocals, but the music just feels like it's whiny and sad and sappy. Yeah, like I don't know how else to say it,
Many
but
of the
yeah.
songs. A few good songs, but just way too emo. Like I said, my favorite songs are Beverly Hills, Perfect Situation. I really like that one. The Damage in Your Heart. I like that one.
Mm,
It freaked me out. So these four, isn't that four or is it five? One, two, three, four. Four songs. I like four
mm,
songs on here. The rest is no thank you. I mean,
yep,
what else do I need to say? I think that's
yeah,
maybe all I gotta say for that. No, one more. After re-listening it though, I mean, it's not as bad as I remember. I liked it
yeah,
a bit
I
more
see.
than I thought I did.
I guess, yeah,
Because just like you,
mm,
in 2002, I was like, oh man, Weezer, that was my college Weezer.
mm,
Maladroit was college for
oh
me
yeah,
for 3 years. That's what I listened to for 3 years because that's how long it took them to make another CD. And then it was this. And I was like, oh God.
yeah, yeah. It's just disappointment.
Yeah.
Like you said, almost felt like betrayal. Having followed them so closely for so long, and then having that, it was just like, ugh, God.
Yeah, because up to this point, they did not make anything bad. Not at all.
Yep.
Not one song was bad before this album.
Yeah.
I would say.
Yeah. I
Not
have
a
to
single
agree.
one. All right, but that's all I got to say about this.
Okay.
Your turn.
Um, Next for me is Gratitude. Um, this was an album that again I listened to it when it came out, and it did not really do much of anything for me. Um, and this was, I think, the first time that Rivers got deep into that whole thing of like trying to sound like whatever's popular at the time. Because there was so much of this music around that time that was just this poppy, fun party music, stuff like Kesha, or, like even rock bands were kind of doing it as well, where they just have these synths and it's very dancey and very electronic, but like they tried to kind of like fit it into their style a little bit. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't at all. So yeah, again, I think one of the things is that it's very also like tongue in cheek. It doesn't take itself seriously. It's very like, you can tell it was just kind of like corny on purpose, and not necessarily to be cringy, but just to be like, ha, we're having fun. Isn't this silly? Like, um, and that comes through in the production and the songwriting, because there are like synths and keyboards in it, but it's not synths and keyboards like Pinkerton where they're actually like adding emotional effect and stuff. It's just mimicking the music that was popular in that time of these, pseudo pop groups that just had huge synth lines for their choruses and stuff.
Sure.
It's also a weird mix of that late 2000s pop punk thing that was going on with stuff like I said here, like Green Day, Good Charlotte, like all these bands that were coming out. And granted, Green Day had been around before that, but that was when Green Day got ultra popular and started making music that was super boring and predictable. And it was just, it feels like it was very much just trying to mimic that style. It's missing a lot, like a boatload in complexity compared to all their previous music. Even Make Believe, honestly, is more complex than this from a writing
Oh yeah.
perspective.
So if I remember, this is their sixth one. So they're
Yeah.
no wait, seventh. This is seventh because five was Make Believe, six was the red one. This is their seventh one.
No, I think this was before Red. I
Uh,
think. Maybe I'm
well,
remembering it wrong. Hold on.
okay.
This was '09.
Okay, so it was after. I remember
It
'08
was,
was
yeah.
the red
Okay.
one.
Yeah. So yeah, and it was definitely a step down from Red. That's for damn
Oh yeah.
sure.
I was
And
very happy about red.
and again, the music, some of it is still well written and fun. It lacks the complexity and the nuance that most of their previous stuff had. It's pretty stupid that they had Lil Wayne on a song. He did not fit in at all. And that was the other thing, is like they also tried to mix in that techno EDM thing that was going on around that time too. A lot of the songs have this really electronic sounding beat going on in the background, where it's like, is Pat even playing drums on this, or is it just Skrillex doing the beats or something? I don't know. But overall, again, most of the songs aren't bad. They're just not great. I think only 3 of them were truly not good. And I don't particularly remember exactly which ones those were. Actually, I remember In the Mall was really dumb. Pat sings that song. Or no, I think Rivers sings it, but Pat wrote it, and it's really bad. I didn't actually like Love Is the Answer, and I remember you said that was one of your favorites, but it didn't do much for me. I did like
the Indian feel.
I like the part where the singers are actually singing in Indian, but the rest of it just does nothing for me. And again,
This is
Can't Stop
surprise.
Partying
That's why I like it
it's
so much.
pretty boring. And there was 2 pretty good the tracks in the bonus stuff. I think Get Me Some was the first one. It was pretty good. And then they also had a cover of
Kids in Poker Face, right?
from which, like, the Poker Face part of it gets a little cringy, but I genuinely like how they covered Kids. It sounds good. But yeah, the rest of them are just, the bonus tracks are just pretty underwhelming. Like, they're not super bad, just like the rest of the album, but they're not great. But I did like that the last song in the main track list is a re-recording of a song that was from, like, before Blue Album. It was actually on Rivers Alone compilation album. He had a demo of it from like 1992 or something, the one called I Don't Want to Let You Go. So I think it was cool for them to bring back a song that old, even though it didn't particularly fit with the rest of the album. It's kind of a cool gesture, I guess, just to be like, hey, yeah, we still like our old music, or something like that.
Cool.
But yeah, that was, again, like, I won't particularly go out of my way to listen to most of it, but I wouldn't turn it off if it came on.
Sometimes I'm in the mood for Gratitude.
There's just a couple songs that I would be like, oh yeah, I'll listen to that one. Especially, I think, like, what is it, like, Let It All Hang Out and If You're Wondering If I Want You To.
I like
Those are
that
the
one.
2 I think that really stand out for me. But yeah, I guess that's a pretty conclusive what I have to say about that.
Okay, now, if I'm not mistaken, on my list, I believe I am gonna talk about it now too. Okay, yeah, that's true.
Okay.
All right, so on my list for I've been numbering them which order. So
Okay.
this is my number 10. Gratitude is number 10 for me. All right, so still that's on the lower half of Weezer, but I mean it's still, I think, decent, pretty good actually. So a good album. I'm serious. It's good.
Yeah.
What about it is good? I think let's go through the things. I think, all right, half the songs are very good. I like the first half, and Love Is the Answer. Like, if you're wondering, I'm your daddy.
Yeah,
Can't stop.
that one's yeah.
Can't Stop
Both of
Party. I
those.
like it. Actually, like it.
I see.
I like it.
Even the Lil Wayne part.
I mean, because they made the song kind of techno, it makes sense. Not that I like it, but
I see.
it's there.
I couldn't do it with that one.
Well, yeah. So anyway, the first time I think this is the first time they used outside musicians to write songs, and this time it worked.
I think so. Yeah, chronologically.
Yeah, because I was going through, when I was listening to each Weezer album, I was looking at the liner notes on Wikipedia to see what was who wrote what and who performed it, and track listings, and which songs were singles. I was going through doing my homework, and I noticed this was the first time they ever used non-band members to write music.
I see. Yep.
So,
I didn't even think about that, but it makes sense because they started doing it a lot after that.
yeah, this is probably the fact that this was pretty successful. They probably this gave them the idea to do it more, which most of the time didn't work for them, I think. But this
I don't
time it did, I think, my opinion. But that and another nostalgia about this is the only time I saw Weezer was in
uh
support of this album, so maybe it helps me like it better because like 5 or 6 of the songs that they performed were from this.
I don't know. I could see most of these songs being pretty fun to hear live, honestly, but they don't really play most of them anymore. I think
Yeah,
I heard some of them live when I saw them in 2011, I want to say, because they did the tour that was for where they were playing all of Blue Album, all of Pinkerton, but then they would also have other stuff in the set. And I'm pretty sure there was two of the songs off of this that they were still playing live, and yeah, it was fun.
yeah, and they have so many, fun live songs on here, like you said. But what I can't really understand the hatred for this. A lot of people
Hmm.
say it's one of their worst.
You know, I think part of it might be the fact that it does have those techno or EDM elements, and or the fact that it has a rapper. And you know that, most stupid white people who like rock or metal are just, oh, we want these stupid rappers and blah blah blah. Like, I mean, I feel like that's where a lot of that may come from. Or I don't know. But I mean, I don't understand the hate that a lot of people have for Red either. Like, I don't know, there's uh, people just seem to get fixated on some weird aspect of a certain album and just like dismiss it because of that one thing that isn't even like actually related to the music, or is only tangentially related to the music. But I don't know. We
Well,
can't speak for other people. I mean, people
I
like to
know
hate stuff just because they feel like it. I don't know.
some of my put me back together.
Hmm.
That's a great song. My God, one of my top 10 probably.
I remember it being good, but I don't remember like the details of it. I might listen to it again. I didn't
Oh, you should. I'm not gonna try and sing it, but just listen. And then yeah, so I really like the Indian song, the Love is the Answer, because
Yeah, yeah.
you don't expect this girl to sing in a verse in Hindi, and she has a really good voice. So you
Yeah.
don't have to
And
know what she's saying just to
yeah,
like it.
I think
And
that was the time when Rivers was getting really deep into meditation and like talking about yogis and like all that kind of stuff. Around that time, he was going on like month-long meditation retreats. And I mean, I think he had been doing that for a long time, but that was when he kind of started talking about it more publicly. So I think he just wanted to bring some of that kind of influence into it. And again, like, I don't hate it. I don't think it stands out as much as you do.
so the lyrics to that song, this might ring a bell. It's like, here it's clear that I'm not getting better, right? So
Hmm.
now it's a ring a bell. That
Yep.
Put Me Back Together song. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
it's a really good song, man. I
Hmm.
love it. It's yeah, top 10 Weezer for me.
You said it's
Of
written
all
by
songs.
All American
Yeah,
Rejects.
All American Rejects. I can hear that in that song too, actually.
I don't
When
know
I
too much about them, but it seems like a contemporary thing. Like I think I mentioned on mine, is that it was also going for that late 2000s pop punk thing, which was very much what they were a part of that movement. So,
yeah, they got a song called Paper Heart and
yep.
Swing Swing, so I can hear
I
that
know Swing Swing. Yep.
the
So
element
yeah.
in that song.
hmm Yep.
And so yeah, that's my number 10 pick. All right, so your
All
turn.
right. Okay. My next one, we're getting into the high the high tiers are here. We're getting close. But my next one is Van Weezer.
Yeah. How crazy
Um,
is that? It's the same as mine.
oh, is it? Okay. But yeah, I this album is fun. It's very poppy, but also poppy in a way that is mixed with metal, in the way that, you know, obviously the whole theme of this album is very clearly aping on 1980s rock and metal.
Mhm.
But it mixes it in a pretty interesting way. And sometimes it might feel a little like ham-fisted or whatever, especially like some of the ones I'll talk about later. But at the same time, it's fun. Like, you can tell they were having fun with these songs. Like,
Oh yeah.
and but yet they also still have some of those classic elements from their early stuff, where it does get really emotional, like, and just has those kind of those very like strong guitar moments in it, kind of like Blue Album. I think is one of the things that I felt like it was getting close to in some ways. The production across the board is really, really good. I think, again, they went back to trying to sound like they used to sound, not just in the songwriting, but also just trying to have it sound production wise like the older stuff. There's some pretty great keyboard work on it, and a lot of the backup vocals sound really good. Almost like, again, Blue Album, where they were doing 4-part harmonies and stuff on the Blue Album. This doesn't go quite that far, and it's all Rivers doing the backup for the most part, but it works and it sounds good. It sounds big. It's a very big sound, like I think Rivers described it as like arena rock kind of thing, especially 70s and 80s, like arena rock sound, where it's just big. It fills the speakers, it fills an arena when you play it. And again, a thing that I've heard him mention a lot was, which you can clearly hear it on the album, is there's a lot of really cool guitar work. A lot of the solos are very again, like 1980s kind of shred, but poppy, but kind of like glam at the same time. And it's also like, early metal. Like it just has a lot of stuff going on with the guitar work, which again, it makes sense if it's a tribute to Van Halen in a certain sense, but at the same time, a lot of the songs aren't all that complex. They're lacking some of the complexity that, like, their early stuff had. A couple of the songs definitely do have the complexity, but I noticed that kind of in the second half of the album is where it gets silly, because they essentially start sampling other songs. They start
Yeah.
using riffs or things from other songs or melodies, and it just feels weird. Like they're sampling it, but they're playing it on live instruments. They're not just playing a recording of that song. Like they're reinterpreting that song, but they don't, I don't know, it's weird because they change it enough to where you probably don't recognize it the first time you listen to it, except for the next thing I mentioned here, the very obvious Crazy Train reference on Blue Dream. They literally play the riff from Crazy Train in the beginning.
Oh, yeah.
And it just made me laugh. Like it was just so silly. I was like, they're really just going for Crazy Train here. But
Never heard that song, that's riff with something else.
yeah. Actually, the one other thing that I remember hearing it with is there's actually a Lil Jon song, a rap song, where they play the main riff from Crazy Train, and I freaking love that song. It's so good.
I never heard it.
It's called Let's Go. You could look it up
Oh,
sometime.
hey, you know what? I remember that.
I
It's
might have
that
showed it
funk
to you
kind of
actually, because
music, that
I really like, because it
early
just plays the main
2000s.
riff, the dun dun dun, and that's the whole song
Yeah, you know what?
for
I
the rap
remember
song.
that.
Yeah, but I really like what they did with it. It just totally puts their own goofy like style into it. But yeah, the way they use Crazy Train here is very weird, and like again, I like it, and it made me laugh because it's funny and it's fun, but at the same time, it doesn't feel like something I want to listen to a lot.
Okay.
So, but that's the other thing, is like they did that with a couple other songs, but it's just not as noticeable. Like on I Need Some of That, it actually has a couple riffs from the Asia song Heat of the Moment, that 80s song.
Oh yeah.
And it also
I
has a little
never
part
took that
from,
and
yeah, and it
put
has a
in that.
little part from Don't Fear the Reaper from Blue Oyster Cult.
You know
Um,
what? I just did not notice that until
yeah.
now.
Uh-huh. And the one thing I haven't been able to figure out is they claim that the beginning of the end, which is one of my favorite songs on this album, they claim that it takes some element from Billy Joel's The Longest Time, but
I heard that too.
I could not quite pin down where
I
that
heard that,
was.
but I didn't hear that in the song.
Yeah, and I think that's what they want, but it's really weird that it plays with your ears that way. But I couldn't figure out exactly where that reference was coming from. And then the other one besides the Crazy Train thing was the Sheila Can Do It, one of the later songs.
Uh-huh.
It's kind of the beginning, and some parts of it are kind of taking off of Motley Crue's Girls, Girls, Girls.
Yeah.
And again, you might have heard it too, but it's one of those things where you hear it, but you don't hear it, because they change it just enough that you don't notice it. But overall, I think there's only 3 truly weak songs on here, but at the same time, there's only like 3 great ones. So it kind of, it's like a teeter totter where it's kind of going back and forth for me. That some of the songs I really love, especially End of the Game, Beginning of the End, and All the Good Ones. Those are all like really, really good. But the rest are just they fluctuate on how good they are. Um, but yeah, one of the other interesting things is that there's a bonus track that was only on the vinyl copy for whatever reason, but it's
Yeah.
another song from before the Blue album that was on Rivers' Alone album. And they re-recorded it for the, or no, it wasn't even on Alone. It was just like 1992 demos or something like that. And they re-recorded it for this album, which again, it's kind of cool. And the fact that the album kind of sounds a little bit like Blue in some areas, it felt kind of interesting that they put that one on there. And it sucks that it's only on the vinyl, but I think it's cool that they put it on there anyway.
Yeah, I don't get vinyl, so I'll never have that song.
Well, it's on YouTube again, so
Okay.
like most of these bonus tracks, you can look them up. It's called "I've Thrown It All Away." It's just a very, it almost sounds a little bit like Sweater Song in a certain way, and it even has writing credits from Jason Cropper, who was the guy who was in
Oh,
Weezer before Blue Album.
okay.
And he left during the recording of Blue Album, which is a kind of a weird story. But yeah, I think that's all I got to say about this. It's good. I don't think it's quite on the level of great, but I enjoy it.
Mhm. Yeah, right. I think I'm going to say a lot of the same things, but I
Uh-huh.
don't know this album too well because it's
Okay.
still new and I only heard it a few times now.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I'm not an expert on this one at all. So let
Uh-huh.
me see what I remember about Van Weezer
Hmm.
2021. A throwback to their heavier sound, like you said.
Hmm.
Well, you kept mentioning the Blue album,
Yeah.
and I can see that for sure. I'm just piggybacking on what you said a lot of here. So there's no bad
Yep.
songs, and some are mediocre. So uh, I didn't like these ones. Beginning of the End, She Needs Me,
Oh,
and
really?
Precious Metal Girl.
I see. Beginning of the
They're
End is probably my favorite on here, but
I don't know. That's just my quick thoughts. Maybe I'll like
okay.
him better, but I
Yeah,
only heard it a handful of times, very, very small handful of times.
I see.
I haven't processed this fully yet, I guess.
Yeah, I
But I
think I've listened
remember
to
I
it three
liked
times, but yeah.
the nice Van Halen and Ozzy tributes, the end of the game and Blue Dream.
Yep.
Those are cool.
Hmm.
Like I said, definitely not an expert. I'm thinking about this only from like someone who's heard it a few times and
Yeah.
face value. So I
Okay.
was excited to hear this though because there was a year plus delay on it.
Hmm.
I remember because of COVID, this was
Yeah.
sitting in the shelf for a long time.
Yeah, and I think they had released one or two of the songs before it got delayed. Um, but then it got delayed for that long time. But then, when it came out, then they like kind of released another single after that, and they paired it. It was used in that new Bill and Ted movie that came out in I think
Oh,
2021. Yeah,
I didn't even watch that.
yeah.
So okay. Yeah, so yeah, I ranked it as number 9, better than some of their established ones because I liked it. I remember just feeling, yeah, that's cool. I'm gonna listen to this again. And
Yeah, like I said, I
um,
enjoy it. It's not like, God damn, this was so good. It's just like, oh, that was good. Like almost like, I don't know. It's just one of those, like, it doesn't make me super excited, but I like it.
yeah, and it's just new. Maybe I'll like it better later on.
Yeah,
Maybe
or
it'll
less. I
go
mean,
up
who knows? Yeah.
if we do this again in 3 years. We'll see how it
How
sits.
many albums they've released? Yeah.
Yeah. And what
Yeah.
else? If I can say anything else about it, I wasn't disappointed. All right. So
Yeah.
I was so used to being disappointed that I thought I was going to be because every 2 or 3 albums is kind of crap from them. It seems like,
Mhm.
but this was solid. It came right after what this chronologically
Right
speaking.
after
This
Pacific Daydream,
okay.
or
So
well, technically after OK Human, I guess.
right. Well,
It
okay.
was
So then,
Pacific, then OK Human, then this.
all right, then I'll take your word for it. But yes,
Mhm.
yeah, this was very cool. I very
Mhm.
happy they made this in
Yeah.
2021. Actually was ready for to be released in 2020, but things happen.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, so go ahead. You're next.
All right. So next for me, I think we're getting technically kind of into the top tier,
Mhm.
with the top 8, I guess, in the top half anyway. But next for me is Green Album.
Hmm.
It's it's a weird one because this was, I think, because it was so long, but for when it came out, it was like one of those things where it came out and most people had already forgotten about them.
Yeah,
It
well,
was like, like,
because
I was still listening
Pinkerton was overlooked a lot too. So people just
it
thought they
was.
made the Blue album, and this came out 7 years later.
Yeah, I noticed a lot of that a lot of people didn't even know Pinkerton existed. But like, I've been listening to Pinkerton and still listening to Blue for a long time. But there was like a year or two before this came out that I had just kind of gotten much more into listening to metal. I was hanging out more with people who listened to metal. So like it was just more in my mental space that I was listening to more metal. And I just kind of thought that Weezer was done, because it was just nobody even knew if they were going to do anything more. And this just kind of, I remember, if I remember correctly, this was like, it wasn't even very long of like a promo cycle. It was almost just like, hey, Weezer has a new album coming out in like 2 months out of nowhere after like radio silence for 3 years.
Yeah.
So it was weird due to the timing when it came out. Or no, it was a one. So it was several years. I forgot how long that was. So that was 5 years after Pinkerton. Because yeah, I think I had kind of trailed off, yeah, probably around like 2000 or something like that. And just, again, I thought they were done. I didn't really think they were going to do anything else. But then one day I was driving home from school at MHS in Zach's truck, and he's like, "Oh, this album just came out." I was like, "What?" Like I didn't even know
Yes,
about it.
I have a story about that too.
So yeah,
You
I was
know,
like, I didn't even know this existed, and he put it on. I was like, "Oh, it's not bad."
yeah, you
But
told me I remember we were in the same class, auto shop, and then you're like,
mm,
this is new Weezer. I was like, what?
yeah, that's so funny. I do remember playing that in shop class, like
Yeah,
because while we were like working on my car or your car, we put it in there and listened to it.
it was
um,
unheard of.
but yeah, it's I guess I would say the thing is, over the years, this has lost a lot of its appeal for me. I like it a lot less than I did when it came out. And again, maybe it was just one of those things because they didn't have that much music then. This was only their third album, like,
Yeah.
and we didn't even know it was coming. Most people thought they were dead as a band, like, so and it was just, I think at the time it was just good to have more music from them. But now we're almost in the opposite boat where it's like we have too much music from them.
I
They
know.
release stuff too often and a lot of it's not great. So I think, yeah, but that's part of why it's lost some of its appeal. But to go back to my points here, it was, yeah, it was a comeback after several years of hiatus, but it was noticeably different in the sound. Even though they had Rick Ocasek producing it again, who did the Blue album, like it didn't sound like the Blue album at all. Like it had some of those elements of, like, let's say like classic, 1950s, 1960s rock music or that kind of thing. But the production just did not sound good. It sounded like they were just trying to make it cleaner and more radio friendly and, that kind of thing. And I definitely noticed it at the time. And now I notice it even more, I think. It has some of the weakest and kind of least punchy guitars of all their early albums. It just feels kind of flat and overproduced. And it's a weird mixed bag where the songwriting as a whole is simpler and
Yeah.
catchier, but it lacks some of that punch or that variety that the first two albums had.
Yeah, I
So
have some comments about this when I get to mine.
yeah,
My
and it's like I liked that Rivers was using really odd kind of unconventional jazz chords that he would throw into a lot of the choruses on this album. That I think is the biggest thing that makes this album stand out, because the production is so lackluster and in general the songs are so cut and paste. It's like everyone has the exact same structure and kind of a similar sound, but the choruses, I think he just went into some interesting songwriting places with a lot of the songs here, and I think that's what saved the album in a certain sense for me. But like I mentioned here, it's also the shortest album in their whole
Yeah.
discography. I think it's 28 minutes. And it's like you put it on and before you know it, it's over. Um, and again, it just all goes back to this idea of it almost feels like they were just trying to make it like some 1950s revival thing where they're just these quick punchy radio songs that they come on and then they're gone,
Oh,
like
yeah.
um and while I don't think there's bad songs, any particularly, uh, Hash Pipe and Island in the Sun are so overly, disgustingly overplayed
Exactly. I had the
in
same
the
comment.
world.
Hmm.
Like, and like I hear it in grocery stores now, like
Yes.
both of those. And
Right.
I just hear them in random places. And I'm just like, again, they're not bad songs, but I have heard those songs probably over 1,000 times. And I do
Yeah.
not want to hear any song over 1,000 times.
Exactly.
um,
Right.
and it just that those tracks, like I will skip those if I listen to this album because I don't need to listen to them. I'm like, why would I? I've heard them so many
Memorized it.
times, and I don't need to listen to them.
You could think the whole song in your head,
Yeah,
start to
and
finish.
again, like I covered Hash Pipe when I was in a band with Zach and Keith. Like, I had to tear apart that song and reconstruct it and like teach it to everybody else in the band. Like, and it's just, well, yeah, it's way too overplayed, and I would be fine never hearing either of those songs again, even though they're good. It's just
Yeah.
I don't want to hear them.
I get it.
And there's only two bonus tracks with this one, and neither of them are very good. One is the Christmas song, which they also had on their Christmas EP, and like it's okay. It's just not nowhere near as good as any of the songs on the album. And then I Do is the other one. It's just a really sad, slow song, which again doesn't fit with the rest of this album. So
That's, yeah.
again, I like it way less than I did when it came out, but it's still solid. Yeah, I guess that's my general feelings on this one. It's lower in the list than I thought it was going to be, but over
Yeah. I
time, I
thought it
was
was
just
one of
like,
their really
it's got to go
top
down.
notch ones.
Yeah.
But going back over them, I placed a lower two.
Yep. Well, that's my thoughts.
Okay, so let's see. My next one is, if it were one album, which is actually 4 EPs,
Ah,
I would say Seasons. And I
okay.
trust me, I don't know. I'm not an expert yet on
Okay.
this. Just like
Yeah.
I'm not an expert at Van Weezer, because
Yeah.
literally I didn't know about this until you told me, and I
Mhm.
downloaded it 2 weeks ago.
And this is a tough one though too because there's so many songs and there's so much to digest. Like
Yeah, I know.
I listened to it all 3 times and I feel like I'm still doing some processing on it, but I got a better grasp after a few listens. But I definitely understand like having a hard time wrapping your head around it because it's
I
a lot.
didn't even know that they released the three, the spring, summer, and autumn.
Yeah.
And then you told me they have this thing called Seasons.
Uh-huh.
And then they're about to release winter the next week or
Uh-huh.
so. And I got
Yeah.
all three of those, and then I got the winter one when it was out. And then it's just too much right now. It's a double
Uh-huh.
album, basically. I can't think of everything about it yet. So
Uh-huh.
it's very good release, though. I do remember thinking, wow, there's some good stuff here.
Yeah.
Um,
Like, yeah. And again, I feel like in certain ways it's going back to older sounds for a lot of it. Eh, but also just also going into territory that they have not even come close to before. Like I'll talk a little bit more about it, but like I feel like there's things they do on these albums that they have not done, but they work. Like just different directions they go in that I was just like, oh wow, like I did not expect them to go this far in this direction with this style of music, you know? But
Yeah, and
yeah.
yeah. I noticed they got the Four Seasons from Vivaldi, and
Yep.
somewhere in each one of those LPs, they got an EP.
Uh-huh.
They got the winter, they made a song out of winter, they
Hmm.
made a song out of spring, they made a song out
Yeah.
of summer.
Yep. Yeah. And interesting, I guess, little like nitpicky fact is that they actually used Vivaldi's Spring twice.
Oh, okay.
um, it's just a weird thing. Or no, they used Winter twice, I think, because in the Spring album, the classical part is actually from Vivaldi's Winter, but yeah, but that's such an interesting concept. Like I'll try to talk a little bit more
Give
about
it to
that
him.
too, but I really liked that aspect of it. I mean, besides that, I'm I'm not like a classical music head or anything, but I really do enjoy classical music, and I listen to it more than I ever thought I would as a kid, let's say. Um, but yeah, I really like that they utilize some of that.
Yeah, and so I can't say for sure, but I think I like spring or autumn the best. And some of the
Mm.
songs on winter I thought were kind of lame, like I want a dog or something, whatever that is
Yeah,
called.
yeah. I mean, I do like that song. The lyrics are dumb, but I did like that song actually. But
Yeah, and I just I mean maybe this when I change my mind and make my mind up fully about it, and once I start actually remembering the names of these songs,
uh-huh.
I'll have a different opinion. Probably, maybe it'll stay, but I'll know more about it. I know
Yeah.
it's just
Hmm.
really too new to know how I feel, but I know it was good, and I say it's
Yeah.
about right in their halfway point,
Hmm.
number 8.
Yep.
Oops!
That
Oh, you
seems
didn't see
solid.
that,
That's all right.
but that's all I can say because I'm still. I thought there was another bullet, but
Oh, okay.
I pressed enter again, so you saw my next pick. But
That's fine.
oh well. Anyway, there's I
We're
can't
getting to
say
the point
enough.
where you can almost guess what the next ones are going to
Yeah,
be because there's so
right.
few left. But
Yeah,
um,
and everyone has almost once they get to the really good ones, almost the same order.
well, we'll see.
Okay, so
um,
your turn.
yep. So my next one is Okay Human. So I do really like this album. And it's a weird one. I didn't like it that much when I first listened to it, but now that I listened to it like two or three more times for this kind of thing, like it really started to stick with me more. More of the songs got stuck in my head to where after I stopped listening to it, I could imagine it, I could repeat the melodies, like um and I think the arrangement is one of the strongest parts of it because it has that chamber pop thing going on, but at the same time they're still playing their instruments too. And again, they're not playing the heavy distorted Weezer guitars, but they're still playing guitars, bass, acoustic drums, and I think the production really works together well. And again, chamber pop in general, I think it hits this really nice spot for me where it gives me the same feelings as something like I mentioned here, almost like a Wes Anderson soundtrack, where
I
you
can
get
see
this
that. And
really
in the artwork, it
lighthearted,
looks like Wes Anderson
yeah,
stuff too.
yeah, you get this lighthearted kind of poppy, just swingy kind of like swaying feel to it, and also just stuff like late Beatles, where they were recording at Abbey Road with small orchestras or chamber stuff, and it or just and several other artists who did similar things to the Beatles back then. But it really just takes me to those same places. Like I feel like I get those same feelings as listening to a great Wes Anderson soundtrack or putting on one of those late 60s, early 70s orchestral kind of albums. And I don't want to say ELO, but obviously using that much strings gives a little bit of that vibe somewhere in there as well. And I think it's actually almost all great songs, but they all are very similar, which I think is something you kind of touched on, or maybe you didn't know how to say it, but
Mhm.
you said something like they don't really stand out as much. But I think that was very much on purpose, not like it was trying to be composed like a piece of classical music, but in that same way that it followed a certain flow to it, to where they weren't supposed to stand out. Like the songwriting itself was supposed to kind of just carry it. And I think it
Yeah,
did
no hit
for me.
single.
Mhm. Yeah, exactly. And it's also their second shortest album, right next to Green Album. And that was something I noticed when listening. It was just like I put it on, I was like doing a little work or something, and then I just looked down, I'm like, oh, I'm on the last song. And I don't mind that. Like it's fine. It's just it very much comes and goes. But at the same time, that also makes me want to listen to it more because I'm like, I know it's not a huge time investment. So I'm like, I'll just throw it on and listen to it again. Why not?
Yeah.
But I think, like you said as well, it doesn't really have any of their signature Weezer sound to it. Um, and it, like I said here, I feel like it almost could have just been a Rivers solo album. Like I know the other members are playing on it, but a good majority of it is him playing piano and him singing it. And I'm pretty sure he wrote all the songs himself. He did not work with other band members to write this. I think he worked with a couple other outside musicians just to get the string arrangement stuff written out, like in a way that made sense, I guess, for like recording. But it feels like a very personal project for Rivers. And like he said that, you know, that this was his thing. He wrote it all during the pandemic as he was observing how the world around us was changing. And he wanted to just kind of like get something of that out in song format. So I think it's really good. I've listened to it like 4 times now, I think, and I feel like I like it a little more each time. There's only 2 songs on there that I feel like I would skip, which is Numbers and Dead Roses. Those two just
Oh,
they
Numbers.
feel like
Yeah, I hate
they
that one.
feel like they're a lull for some reason that just I don't know, like they just don't fit with the rest. But
I
every
remember
other
that.
song, yeah, every other song, I'm just like, man, this is so good while I'm listening to it. But those 2 were the only ones that were just like, like I can do without those.
I remember that
But
feeling of that Numbers song. I thought it was very lame.
yeah, but yeah, in general, I also really like that there was an instrumental track on here. I think it was really cool, and it let them dive more into complex composition. Again, not like classical music, but almost more like a little proggy in a certain way. Um, and I think it worked really well to not have vocals for a little while, that it just kind of had this almost like musical interlude in between other tracks, especially after Dead Roses. I feel like you need a little break after that. So you had a little like 30 seconds of instrumental, which was kind of cool. But yeah, I think my liking of this will continue to change as I listen to it more, but I do really enjoy it.
Okay, fair enough. All right, so what's my next one? This is Green Album, and
Uh-huh.
got a lot of things to say about this.
Okay.
For number one, it's their comeback. I didn't know that they were still around
Yep.
until,
We talked about that.
this
Yeah.
came out.
Hmm.
Yeah, and a lot of things is said already, so we'll go quick. And so, popular songs, much shorter in length, just like what you
Yep.
said.
Hmm.
And they made some funny videos again
It's
because
true. Yeah.
that's their thing.
Hmm.
And Hash Pipe is funny. They're like what in sumo suits,
That's right. Yeah.
and it's very memorable.
Hmm.
Almost too memorable. But here's the thing: classic songs, Photograph, Island in the Sun, Hash Pipe,
Hmm.
and I would, it sounds like Green Day, but in a good way. I think it sounds like good Green Day. And I would say that if you heard any Weezer song on the radio, 95% chance it's either the Blue Album or this.
I would say
95.
95% it's just this.
Yeah.
Like I don't hear stuff from Blue Album besides Say It Ain't So, I guess, like maybe every once in a while, but 95% of the time it's this album for sure.
Yeah. In that regard, it's their most successful album. I don't know.
I
So
think so.
the cons, I would say, are, it's great. I love it. And my favorite song on here is Simple Pages. Not a really
It's a great
popular
song.
song from them.
Yeah, it's really good.
I really like the verses. It sounds like you can sing along in those, so
Yeah, or I'm trying to remember the verses like "Da-na-na-na,
just
da-na-na-na." Yeah.
I can't really sing the words. I don't know
Yeah,
it
again,
right
it feels very like 1950s or 1960s, like just that type of poppy, bluesy rock stuff, but like turned up to 11, you know.
Yeah, and only one song that I didn't really like very much is Smile,
I mean,
It's
I like it. It's not it's one of the weaker ones on the album, aside from Islands in the Sun and Hash Pipe, but those are mostly just because they're overplayed. But um or
yeah.
well, you know what? Actually, I'm trying to remember. Actually, Smile might be one of my favorites. I'm trying to remember how the melody goes.
Well,
Um
I just remember upon hearing this again last week or so, I mean, that was the one I didn't like as much as the others. But everything else, very good. And 29 minutes, you don't have to skip any songs. You just listen to the whole thing and it's done. And even if you don't like a song, it's only 2 minutes. Just listen to it. So you
Actually,
get the
no,
whole
I think
experience.
Smile is one of my favorites now that I think about it. But yeah, I agree that the short length, just like I said with OK Human, it works in its favor to a certain extent. But at the same time, it also has that feeling when you're listening to it from beginning to end, like we used to do on CDs, where it was just like, oh, it's over already, um,
Yeah.
which can be good or disappointing depending how you look at it. But I think it's interesting anyway.
Yeah, and so we already said most of what we could possibly say about this. So
Yeah.
I don't want to add any more. I think we've said enough. Your
Okay.
turn.
All right. Next for me is Red Album. Um, I really like this album. It was a great comeback after a couple of years of releasing crap. Uh,
Yeah.
and I mean, I still have the giant poster of this in my house. It's like right behind me right now. But
Yeah.
because I worked at a record store at the time, so they sent that huge like 3 foot by 3 foot replica of the cover. Um, but yeah, it was so refreshing for them to come back and have songs that just felt like they were going back to the core of what Weezer was. Uh, but at the same time, it had a ton of changes to their formula or like things that were experimental for them. Like I said here, it was really the first great thing they had done since 2002 for When Maladroit. So it was great to kind of
Yes.
I felt like it touched on all the different aspects or like faces of Weezer as well, because it has the fun goofy songs, it has the slow heartfelt songs, it has the fun rocky songs, it has the emotional kind of classic Weezer sounding songs, and I feel like it really just covered all those bases and all of them
Yeah.
were good.
That's why I
um
think that metaphorically they did another cover like two other
yeah.
ones they've done before. Every time they reinvent themselves or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, you could kind of see it that way for the most part, except Teal maybe, except I guess I don't know. It was their first cover album, so whatever.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I think there's only really one like truly weak song, like one that I don't like listening to at all. Um, and that includes the bonus tracks. And there's a lot of bonus tracks for this because
Yes, I
the,
know.
the deluxe edition had 4 bonus tracks. There's an iTunes bonus track, and then there's like 3 or 4 other ones as well that were all just on different versions of things. Um,
Yeah.
and again, like I like that this was the first time that they really dug into the whole concept for this was that each member wrote and performed their own songs. It
Yeah,
wasn't
that was
just
different.
Rivers hogging all the writing and all the singing. He just said, why don't I know all these other guys are good writers. We should all do this together and have them put their vision of a song forth instead of it going through a Rivers filter before it gets out to the world. So um I really like even like the Pat Wilson song is really fun. I like Brian Bell's song quite a bit. Scott's are the weirdest ones. I don't particularly care for his singing, and the songs almost have this kind of country twanginess to them, but they're not bad. Like I don't mind them. I think they're some of the weirdest ones that don't fit quite as much, but I don't dislike them.
Yeah.
Um, so the production was also really great because like it went back to like when you listen to stuff like especially like Pork and Beans is kind of like the biggest one on this album. Those guitars just like punch you in the face when they come in,
Oh,
like
I love them. Dun,
it's
dun,
like
dun, dun.
yeah. And it just it doesn't let up when they bring the heavy guitars on this album. It hits like so hard, and that's like one of the best things you can say about a Weezer album.
Oh yeah.
And again, like I think The Greatest Man That Ever Lived is one of my favorite songs from them, like ever. And what they did was they took this old American folk song from like, like it's like a religious hymn basically
Yeah,
from
sugar him or
several hundred
something.
years ago. Yeah. But like they basically rearranged it into like 6 or 7 different songs that all sound different, but they're using the same melody and the same chord progressions. And they just made it like this huge epic that has these
It's
different movements
it's
and
their
like,
Bohemian Rhapsody.
yeah, you could kind of look at it that way, honestly. but I think I like it a little more than Bohemian Rhapsody, oddly enough. Even though it's not as complex in songwriting, I really like in general, I just like when musicians take one composition and they'll record it in several different ways. And I think we've talked about that before with like Collective Soul, or even when you go to like listen to a demo of a band, just to hear that different version of what it sounded like before. This is like that, but in a song. It's like experimentation using the exact same piece of music, but doing something completely different with it every time. And like, I think that's one of the things that is the most interesting to me in music in general. So seeing them do that as like a song in itself is really cool to me. I think the only one I really don't like is Everybody Get Dangerous, which I think most people agree it's just not a great song. But it's also interesting. This was during a time when I think he had just recently got married, and started listening to a lot of Japanese music. And he actually does a cover of a Japanese song on the Japanese version of this album, which is actually by one of my favorite Asian artists. Granted, it's not one of my favorite songs from her, but it was just really interesting to see him go that far into his kind of exploration of Japanese culture to where he actually covered a song on one of a Weezer album. Because actually, like just after this is when he also started his Japanese project that he did called Scott and Rivers, where he plays, there's this guy who's in this Chicago punk band called Alistair. And he had lived in Japan for, I think, since the early 2000s. And had just covered tons of Japanese songs over the years. So Rivers became friends with him and they started writing actual Japanese music with Japanese lyrics and stuff.
Yeah,
And
I
I
heard
really
it.
like that project. Yeah. So I think this was kind of like the start of that, of like delving into actually recording Japanese music. So I think it's an interesting footnote to the album. But yeah, like my last point says, I think it was Weezer doing experimentation the right way, to where everything still worked, it still somehow fit together, and it sounded good. And also, I think I didn't mention, but "Dreamin'" I think is one of my other favorite
Oh
songs. I
yeah,
think
I like that
it's the
one.
most like classic Weezer song on this album. I would say it sounds closer to the first four
Yes,
albums, but I love that song.
it's a sing
Um,
along.
it is. But yeah, I think that's probably about all I really got to say. They did a couple other covers for the bonus tracks, but they were just kind of whatever.
Yeah,
But
yeah. I
they
used
covered
to
the
think,
the band, which was, I mean, it's fine. It's just, it's a cover, so whatever. I don't think
right.
Weezer particularly does covers well in general,
Hmm.
so I think they're better left to make their own music. But
I thought this was my number three favorite, but listening to the whole discography again, it's not my number three. I'll tell you when though.
okay. Well, yeah, I think that's about it for Red. It was a pretty great Weezer album and a great comeback, and kind of was at a important time for me, I guess, that it helped me get
Yeah,
back into them and like restored my faith in them to a certain
exactly.
degree. Yeah.
Totally 100%. All
Yep.
right, so what is my next one? It is Maladroit.
Okay.
Yeah, I like this one, little better than Green, just a little. For some reason, I don't know. Maybe it's the it's not great, but at the time I thought it was. I was like, man,
I don't know.
Weezer's back,
Man,
man.
I still love this album to death, but I'll talk about that more.
Yeah, I think I loved it at that time because there's only four, and it was better than the green one. So I was like, hell yeah. And then they had every song is pretty good. I mean, every song is good. I would listen to
Hmm.
each one, not
I
not
agree.
skipping anything.
Yep.
So what else? It reminds me of my college years because I
Yeah.
believe I got this for Christmas in the Christmas of '02,
Yeah.
our first semester in
Reminds me of,
college.
yeah, freshman year of college, especially.
Yes, and
That
since
summer, yeah, I fucking listened to this like nobody's business. Or although I think it was summer of '03, or no, maybe it was '02. I don't remember what month this came out. Let me check.
well, I didn't get it
No, it
at the
was
exact.
September '02. Yeah, so I got it in '03, and like that whole summer,
Yeah.
which was in between me going to Purdue Cal and me going away to school. Like this, I listened to this album so many times, like
So
just on repeat.
since my college years were from '02 to let's just say '08,
Mhm.
this was it. This was it. I didn't listen to
Make believe, and yeah,
Make Believe too much. And then the Red Album was kind of when I was done with college. So this was
yeah,
my college years right
yep,
here.
I can see
Every
that.
every if I was gonna listen to Weezer, it was this or the
Yep,
blue, not the green so much, or Pinkerton.
yeah,
And then so yeah, I was just saying, like I got my I was just saying, I got this Christmas '02 after my first semester of college. No new CD until 2005, and it was a major letdown.
yep,
So the CD that this is made me realize I was a devoted Weezer fan. Like I kind of
mm,
liked, the green one. It's like, oh, cool, they're back.
yeah,
And then this one's like, holy shit, they're awesome. I love them.
yeah,
And
I
then
can see that.
what else can I say? Sometimes, but however, I don't listen to all of it. Sometimes I just listen to the first three songs. I
I see.
sometimes just do that, but
Huh,
um I like a lot of the rest too. So all of it, in fact.
I
Don't
see.
so if I'm just in a quick, want to hear a song from Weezer, if I want to hear this, I'll go to just the first three and then
I
go to
see.
something else. But if I'm driving or something, I have this on, I'll listen to the whole thing.
Mhm.
Just like I did several million times before driving to Purdue Cal from Crown Point. This
Yeah,
was
yeah,
back when I just had CDs instead of iPods, so I just put
yep,
this on. This is like, how many minutes is this? The CD is 34 minutes.
mhm,
I don't have bonus tracks or anything in this. I don't know if they made any.
yeah. Yeah, there was two, but they were, well, actually just one, because one of them was just a live version of Island in the Sun. So it's like, who
Oh,
cares?
yeah. So I just got the standard CD, 34 minutes, and that's about as long as it takes from Crown
Yeah,
Point to
yeah,
get to Purdue Cal. So
yep, that
I
makes
listened to
sense.
this countless times on that drive on the way back too. So yeah, one of my favorite songs is, of course, Keep Fishing, and the video is a hilarious video with the
Yep,
Muppets.
yep.
I had a T-shirt. I remember we were
Oh,
both
really?
shopping at Greenfields,
Oh,
and
yeah.
there's that one shirt left, and I saw it before you did.
Oh, shit. I
So
forgot about that until
I
now.
bought it. Yeah. Yeah, that was fun. I had that. I still have that Kermit playing the guitar
That's awesome.
T-shirt,
Nice.
but it doesn't fit me anymore, of course.
Oh, yeah. That's
Gained a
life.
few pounds since then. So I'll still keep it, but I'm not gonna wear it.
Yeah, I have a lot of shirts like that.
I know. I just can't for the life of me get rid of it.
Yep.
Anyway, maybe I'll lose weight someday, probably
Yeah.
not, but
Well,
I think that's all I gotta say. No, there's one. Yeah, I mean, the rest is good, but not as good as the American
those
Gigolo
three.
Dope
Mhm.
Nose Keep Fishing.
I see.
Yeah. So there's everything else is good, but I mean the top three, those first three songs. All right. So what else do I have? Nothing. I think that's oh, and one more song. Okay. The best song in the end of it is Possibilities.
Oh,
Oh,
yeah, that song is,
possibilities.
I think it's probably my favorite on the album.
Yeah, and I
I
overlook
love it.
that sometimes because I just listen to the first three.
And it's
You know?
so quick. It's only 2 minutes long, but it's like, it from the very beginning, it just like comes out swinging and like never
Yes.
stops. It's just fast
Yes.
punk. Like it's so
I
good.
need to keep remembering to listen to that song, not just the first three.
Yep. Definitely one of the best.
But yeah, like I said, this is my college years in one CD, basically. I mean,
Yeah.
if I had to say one
Makes
CD that
sense.
encapsulates all my college
Yep.
uh, music, this is it.
Hmm.
Okay, your turn.
All right. Next for me is gonna be the White Album. Um, I'm a pretty huge fan of this. I was really excited for it when they were first kind of talking about it and releasing songs from it. I felt like it was gonna be hard to follow up Everything Will Be All Right in the end, but I think they managed it really, really well, because they went with what essentially is a pretty different sound, but at the same time stayed with classic Weezer elements that you want from their albums. So Um, yeah, again, I think it had a large set of shoes to fill, and I think they managed to. This is one of the only times in the last 25 years they actually had two good albums in a row.
Oh man,
So um,
it's really
the
good.
yeah, I love the production. They it's not as like crazy heavy as like Red Album or a lot of the other the ones we think of as the heaviest ones, but it's close. They managed to get the sound pretty close, but also sound a little bit more raw in a certain way. It sounds modern, but it kept what we love about their sound, I think. I think in the whole song list, there's only one song I'll skip, which is "Thank God for Girls," and it is absolute garbage. I
Yeah.
cannot listen to that song. Um, it's funny because I saw them live for this album, and they did not play that song, even though it was like the big hit single off this album. They didn't even fucking play it.
They nonsense.
It's so dumb. Again, it's a stupid meme song. Rivers with his wanting to sound cool and rapping and shit. But yeah, it also had a very cohesive theme to it. Because and again, Rivers talked about this many times that it was just going to be like their beach album, like their like positive summer album that was reminiscent of like the Beach Boys or just classic summer music that you would think of from like the rock sphere, I guess you would say.
Mhm.
um and I really liked it. Even from the beginning, they started releasing. It was weird because I think the first thing they released was "Do You Want to Get High," which is like the weirdest, darkest song from this album, but I fucking love it. Like it sounds like a song that was just taken off of Pinkerton. Like everything about it is just dark and raw and heavy and noisy. It's got feedback all over the track. Like the guitars are constantly feeding back, and like that's so much of the Pinkerton sound to me. And I was just like, shit, are they going to do like the whole album this way? Like, are they really going back to like that sound again? And granted, the whole album doesn't sound that way, but I was very happy that that song took me back to that like feeling like, oh man, this is just raw and dark and interesting and noisy. So very much took me back to like a Pinkerton thing. But then I think they released of course, stupid God, Thank God for Girls, because I think they released like 3 or 4 of these as singles before the album came out, and I liked all of them except Thank God for Girls. Um, 2 of the bonus tracks are also really, really good. Like
Oh yeah.
I feel like they could have just been on the album. The
Yeah,
Friend
I
of a
wonder why.
Friend and Fake Smiles, like they feel like they would have fit right in this track list. I don't know why they were cut, but they're very good.
How about I Love the USA too? That was a bonus
It's
track.
I don't like that song at all. They played that live when I saw them, and I was just like, ugh.
Uh,
um, but yeah, I think the highlights for me, it's like there's a lot, but like I really like Summer Lane and Drunk Dory, which
oh
is
yeah.
interesting because I when Rivers started releasing all those huge like demos, I think it was in 2021, he would release them on his website and you could download this pack of like 200 demos from a certain like era of Weezer.
Oh
And
man.
as I was listening to the ones that I'm pretty sure were from, what were they from? I want to say they were from um Red Album maybe, or maybe even before that, but it was way, way back in their discography. And then I found demos where they were writing Summer Lane and Drunk Dory. It's the same chord progressions, the same melody. The lyrics are different, but I was just like, holy shit, like this song was from back in like 2001 and they waited until 2016 to release it. Like the fact that Rivers keeps 15 years of song ideas and like we'll still go back and use them was just nuts to me. Like I think
Yeah.
that was the furthest one back that I found, but I was just like, it's one of my favorite songs on here. But hearing that demo, I was like, oh my god, it's so cool that like it's been that long and he's held on to that song for so long.
Yeah, I wonder what
um
else he's got.
Dude, there's so much. Like I spent hours going through just a couple of those packs that I got, and I was just like overwhelmed. I was like, there's so much. And then again, I would hear stuff that was really from a long time ago that they didn't use until Red or Hurley or, you know, like way later on. So it's interesting to delve into, but you got to have a lot of time. But yeah, I love LA Girls, California Kids, which is interesting because they actually re-recorded California Kids as a single for Scott and Rivers, and they changed the lyrics to Japanese, and
Oh,
it's just
okay.
called California. It's pretty interesting. I like both versions, but I think California Kids is a little bit better. But yeah, I think Thank God for Girls is the only really bad one. I love King of the World. Jacked Up is interesting just because
I
it's
like that.
so different. It's so like stripped down. It's just piano and Rivers and drums. That's like the whole song. Endless Bummer is also cool. It's a very like campfire kind of sound, but then it gets heavy later. It has a really cool guitar solo. Like I just think they really knocked it out with this album, and it was a surprising good follow-up to Everything Will Be All Right.
Yeah,
I
two in a
still listen
row.
to it pretty often. And I'm glad you finally got to hear it. Like I remember I played it for you when we were driving back from Canada earlier last year. But we were fucking waiting in the stupid
Yeah,
customs line,
it's in a
the
bad mood.
border. Yeah, right.
I
And it
didn't
was
like
hot.
anything.
Yeah. Um,
Mhm.
and my air conditioning was broken. So that
Yeah.
wasn't great. But yeah, I'm glad you came back around to it, and you seems you liked it a lot more.
Well, I know, I knew I was always going to give it another listen, and
Yeah,
I'm always up for that.
yeah. But yeah, I don't really have anything bad to say about it, particularly besides that one song. So you can go
I
on
would
for
like to go to
yours.
Canada again and listen to that.
Yeah, we could.
Yeah,
Now I have
we'll see.
AC.
Well, things happen in my life too.
Yeah,
So my future is going to be kind of up in the air. Don't want to say
it
what.
is.
Okay. But anyway, I'm going to say what my fifth one is now. Red. Okay, I
Ah,
like this one, number 5. And Reese, and when I went through I thought I would give this number 3, but actually,
mm,
you know, the white one still hasn't came up, so it's
yeah,
actually better than this, I think, in my
yeah,
opinion.
yep. I could.
And
Yeah.
a white one, and I think if you're keeping score, you know what my top 4 are. I think everyone could see which are my top 4, but this
Hmm.
is the first great album since Pinkerton,
Mm,
and that was 12 years before
yeah.
this one.
Yep.
So
Very
I
long
was
time.
quite um quite happy. And
Hmm.
I would say that Maladroit was good, but I would say that's where the line is good versus great.
Mm,
And such a welcome release after Make Believe, which you've already
hmm.
said. A lot of the
Yep.
things that you're saying here about this I can't say any better. So
Mm,
just leave it at that. And then back to making silly videos, the
yeah.
memes, all the
The
guys who
memes.
were
Yeah.
popular on YouTube at the time
YouTube. Yep.
had a cameo on there.
Yep.
And
Such a
wearing
great
the
song.
1,000 t-shirts. Remember
Yep.
that?
That was Scott. Yeah.
Mhm. And it's the third color CD. Now I think if I'm what I'm trying to think is why do they sometimes give just a color? I'm trying to put the connect the dots together. What
Yeah,
I
I
think
think
is every time
people
they
have asked, yeah, but I don't think Rivers has given a straight answer, let's say. So I guess it's more, yeah, left to like theories. So what's yours?
my theory is the first one, okay, that's the band introducing themselves.
Hmm.
And then they reinvented themselves in '01 and literally came back from not being a band. And then
Hmm.
'05 was a shit record. They knew
Hmm.
that, so they wanted to go back to the old Weezer, and this is the Red
Hmm.
album now.
Yeah.
And then they've done it a couple more times, but
Hmm.
always something like a renewal or something. I don't know.
Hmm. I can
And
kind of see it.
contributions from all bandmates. That's
Hmm.
the first, and I think one of the only times they actually did that. I never heard other
To that degree,
singers.
yeah. Hmm.
Yeah. So
Yep.
it's the only time, and I really think the only con is there's too many songs,
Mm.
slightly longer than the others. Like if you include the bonus tracks, like I do,
Hmm.
since I liked it so much, I downloaded all the bonus tracks.
Hmm.
Something in there, not every song is awesome. They're all
Yeah.
good, but
Yeah.
like Miss Sweeney, that's a weird one. Pig, that's a weird one, and
Yeah,
Um, you know, thought I knew. I kind of like that one. Never mind.
I like that.
But
That's the Brian one. Yeah,
yeah, thought I knew. Yeah, that song. He's like very different singer than I
it's like
can't remember. It's yeah.
thought I
And
knew you better
now I
than.
remember very
Uh,
well. Yes. Yeah. So uh, there's nothing I could say that you didn't already say. So
hmm.
just leave it at that.
So we're
You know,
pretty close in
quite
agreement on that one. Yeah.
quite a good one, I would
Hmm.
say. You know, not my top four, but it's top five.
Yeah.
Your turn.
All right. Next for me is Maladroit. Yeah, this album has just really stuck with me over the years. I've I liked it when it came out. It was at a weird time because again, like 2001, was Green Album, which was a total surprise to most of us. But it really got me back into Weezer in general, and also caused me to start, making music with our band, that sounded like Weezer, and hanging out a lot more with Keith and Zach and all that stuff. And then it was just this weird thing where, like, within that time, it almost felt like a whirlwind. Like we were in that band for like, I don't know, almost a year. But then it was like, I didn't know about Maladroit until a while later after it came out, like the next year, because I was just so into other things. I had started college, or basically, or not hadn't started college, or yeah, I had by that time actually. So yeah, it was just like so many things that happened, and I didn't even know this was coming out. And then something happened where I heard a song on the radio, and I thought it was a new Weezer song that was on this album. So I bought the album because I thought it was on there, but it wasn't on there. It wasn't even a Weezer song.
Who was
um,
it? Ozma?
it was Ben Queller. I don't know if you remember him,
Not at all.
but like it sounded a lot like Weezer, and I was just like, shit, this must be a new Weezer album. I'm gonna go pick that up at Best Buy today. I went and bought it, and I was like, that song's not on here.
Oh
But at
yeah.
the same time, I was like, but I don't care
Before
because
YouTube.
this album's so fucking cool. Like I don't care that that song's not on here. Um, because yeah, it felt like it went back to this really raw production. Like they weren't trying to make it sound poppy or clean or like super radio friendly. It
Yeah,
was
these songs are
just,
really in your face.
yeah, like the production was really loud, it was noisy, not like Pinkerton noisy, but it was, it had those elements. There were feedback guitars, really heavy guitars, almost like metal riffs here and there, like American Gigolo especially. um and then like a lot of it, especially in the middle to the end, it was largely songs that had like slower tempos, that they weren't super fast or poppy or punky. They were just like these chilled out rock songs, is the best way I could describe them, but I really like them. Like they just have this interesting quality that they flow together really well, and like they all have unique melodies, unique guitar parts, and I just really like that it's a change of pace from a lot of their earlier stuff. I don't think there's a single bad song on here.
Yeah, that's
um,
true.
and I think a lot of the melodies here are a little more complex than some of their other stuff. And again, it keeps that heavy rock or almost metal sound to it. Um, yeah, like I've listened to this so many times front to back. And again, it is short, but it's not Green Album short. So I came to love every single song. Like, and also the guitar work, even on the slower songs, it is pretty complex. Like a lot of the riffs are actually like, they use a lot of bigger chords where, like they'll play like a big G chord, but they'll play a single note on each string, like playing out an entire G chord, switching to like a C chord and playing out every note on that chord. And those kind of things that aren't just like this driving like punk metal rhythm kind of thing. They go much more into like a swaying kind of like, um almost like, dreamy kind of sound to it for some of it, because of the way that they use those guitars. And I think that's what makes this as unique as it is for me, just because so many of those songs, they and a lot of the riffs are even, they're almost like solos if you really look at it. Like I think Take Control, if I'm remembering correctly. Um, and there's a couple others where it's like the main riff is like these like pentatonic scales on the guitar going up and down and like just playing really interesting guitar parts. So like
Yeah.
it's always just stood out to me. Again, Possibilities is one of my favorite Weezer songs, I think, honestly. But
Oh yeah.
every song on here works for me. I love just the diversity of the guitar work. But yeah, really not a bad thing to say about it. And I think, like you said, I think the Keep Fishing video definitely got my attention
Oh man.
when I saw it. It's just funny. I don't even like the Muppets that much, but the fact that they were like interacting with the members of the band, it was silly and fun.
Exactly.
But yeah, really
So
love
I
this
never
album.
noticed that about the instruments in the songs because I wasn't a musician for
Yeah,
very long yet. So
yeah. Did you listen to it again now
oh
for
yeah,
this? Okay.
just recently, yeah, I did. I listened
Yeah,
to every single song, every
yeah,
album to make preparations for this.
yeah. I'd say
Yeah.
if you go back to it, maybe pay attention to that. Just listen to how much of it is long single note guitar passages as opposed to just like chugging on a power chord, like is pretty typical of Weezer's style. Um, more of it is similar to just like a very slowed down version of something more like, the beginning of My Name is Jonas or Surf Wax America or something like that, where it's all single notes playing on a chord,
Okay.
but a lot of Maladroit, it does that, but much slower and just plays it out more at a slower pace. But I really like that about the album.
Nice.
So that's it.
All right, what do I got for number 4? It is White.
Ah,
Yeah, I mean, a lot of things that you've said already, I can have
uh-huh,
only just the same thoughts. I mean, because
uh-huh,
it's a very refreshing album because Weezer was on such a roll. It's from
hmm
2014 to 2016 where they're awesome, and I didn't know
yep,
that. I didn't notice it too much at the time,
uh-huh,
frowny face,
yeah,
because I was so used to them not sucking, but not
hmm
themselves from
yep,
Death to False Metal and Hurley
yep,
and 2014 was their awesome one, everything will be all right in the end. And I was
hmm
still down on Weezer because I thought they sucked from what they
yeah.
used to
I
be.
remember when you had said at some point that you didn't think that much of Everything Will Be All Right. I was like, did you listen to it? Because
Yeah,
like,
I just thought that already that it would suck because I had something in my mind that told me it would, and I didn't like it. But
I
I
see.
do definitely love it now. So didn't pay too much at first to this because I heard "Thank God for Girls" and I knew that song was so terrible. And I thought the
Yeah.
rest of the CD was like that.
hmm
I didn't want to listen to it, so I may have avoided this CD for maybe a year or so. But
Okay.
then I could really hear the influence from the Beach Boys on a
Yep.
lot of songs here. We got a good girl, we got a good thing, an endless bummer.
hmm
Those songs come to mind for when I think of how they were, inspired by the Beach Boys. But
Yep.
um, the best songs, there's so many. Do you want to
Oh,
get
I know.
high? Change the
Yep.
world, Summer Lane and Drunk Dory, L.A. Girls. And L.A. Girls kind of reminds me of either some that should be on the Roseanne. I'm not. Yeah, it sounds like Roseanne from that. Their
Or
unused
Suzanne.
songs from
Yeah.
from Suzanne, not
Yep.
Roseanne.
hmm
Suzanne from
It does.
their
Yep.
unused songs from the Blue album.
It very much does. Yep.
Yeah,
I love that song.
I finally figured out which song it reminded me of. It's Suzanne. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I play it in Rock Band all the time. Like I really like the drum parts. Like everything about that song is just so cool.
Mhm. So I like this a lot. It's my top 4, and that's hard to do. When I
Yep.
just listened again, 2016, I was like, "What? Wow, this is something I was not aware of this awesome
hmm
CD, how awesome it was, apart from the first time I heard it in like 2017. I was
hmm
like, okay, put it on the CD shelf again. Didn't really pay much attention to it, but then now, yeah, I love it.
hmm
So Jacked Up and Endless Bummer. Like I said, every song, so many great songs, and just hardly anything that's not good, except for that stupid
Thank God for
Thank God
Girls.
for
Yep.
Girls
It's so
track
out of place.
song.
Yeah.
And I finally got the 4 bonus tracks 7 years
Mm-hmm.
later because I like this so much. In the bonus tracks, I like that Pussy Riot version of Jacked Up, and you
I
know
didn't listen to that actually.
it's from the girl from that Russian
Yeah,
group.
yeah. Hmm.
Um, she has a verse in there or something. I
That's the only
remember.
one I didn't listen to actually.
Yeah, so I Love the USA is also a good song too, in my opinion.
I'm
And
not a fan.
yeah, just listen to Jacked Up after you hear after you hang up here. Listen
Did,
to Jacked Up from the extra version of it.
did you look up the one that's a little harder to find, The Last Days of Summer? It was only
No,
on the fan club thing.
no,
Yeah,
no, I
it's on
haven't.
YouTube now. But I don't. It's okay. I don't think it's as good as like the main album. But I still think Friend of a Friend and Fake Smiles are definitely like could have been on the album. The Last Days of Summer feels like a B-side. Like there's a reason it's not on there, but it's not too bad.
Okay.
So you could look that up, on YouTube if you want to check it out.
I will, but let's do this first. And your turn now for what number? I don't know.
All right.
Or for you?
I think it should be 4, yeah. So next up for me is the Seasons EPs.
Oh, it's
This
wonderful.
very, very quickly shot to the top of my favorites after listening a couple times. It's one of those things, and it's not all good. It's definitely not all good, but the fact is, there's 28 songs, and I think 17 of them are like truly great Weezer songs, which
Mhm.
is a pretty good ratio if you really want to get down to it. That's like almost 2/3 of it that is just great. And I guess it's more that I feel like certain ones are stronger than others. Like especially, I think Spring is pretty much perfect. I
Yeah.
think every note on this album is awesome. Like it's the kind of awesome that mixes everything I like about Weezer, but presents it in a way that's like all together and it's all like cheerful. It's just like I was like laughing at most of these songs because they're so fun to listen to, and you can tell that they had fun making these songs, and I was just like it's just so fun the whole way. Like um and it kind of, it's funny because the opening track is the one where it's playing the Vivaldi song, and he's talking about Shakespeare makes me happy and stuff like that. But that is kind of the theme of this. Is a big part of it was that Rivers was getting heavily into theater stuff, um, which he had done a long time in the past while he was in college and stuff, but he was getting back into like going to live theater plays, and Shakespeare was always one of his favorites. So he wanted to capture the feeling that a lot of Shakespeare's works had, that was just that kind of dreamy summertime or springtime vibe, I guess. And it went as far into incorporating musical elements that were from that Victorian era. Like there's a lot of mandolins that you'll hear in several of the songs on Spring, that is very much what you think of when you think of a Shakespeare play, or
Okay.
you think of Victorian music from that era. And just the way that it all comes together, it mixes with classic Weezer sounds and loud guitars. It mixes with interesting synths. The last song, Wild at Heart, just has this really interesting melody and chord progression that feels very classical. So again, like throughout this whole series of seasons, like they're constantly just throwing in these little bits of the classical inspirations, but very much making it its own thing. It's not just like, here's a thing from classical, we're just going to throw it, and have it exactly like it's normally performed. It's just like mixing it into a melody or just little things here and there. So um Spring is great all the way through, but then Summer, I didn't like any of it.
Oh no.
It's like every song I felt like almost like Death to False Metal, where it's like something felt
Potential.
missing with every song. I
Yeah.
felt like there's good elements here, like there's a good chorus, but then it just goes into or like a good verse, and it goes into a shitty chorus, or there's a crappy verse, but it goes into a good chorus, and then maybe a bad verse and chorus, but then it goes into a cool bridge towards the end. But no song was actually like good all the way through for me. Like everyone, I was just sitting there like, damn, like why did they do this next? It just, it felt like it all didn't fit together. It all had this very angry, sad kind of vibe to it, which I think he also talked about, which is also weird because it's a summer album, but for whatever reason, he went really into weird dark places, and the lyrics are about like ancient gods laughing at us and torturing us, and like again, like working in these weird kind of Shakespeare things. But I just don't think any of summer really worked for me. It's very chaotic was one of the words I could really say to describe it. And yeah, sad, angry. It was kind of loud, but not in a way that felt good or interesting. It was just weird. um, but then autumn is great. 5 of the 7 songs on there I thought were very, very good. Went back to that kind of classic Pinkerton or Ozma type sound, or even a little bit of the Rentals had heavy synths, and just that general classic songwriting sense, I guess. So I really like that. And winter, it was about the same. I think there was only 2 songs that didn't really work for me out of the 7. Um, but it's a little more upbeat than I expected it was going to be, being like a winter album. Um, and it's not all upbeat, of course. I think the 2 worst songs are the ones that are kind of like the downtrodden, kind of like weird, sad, or uncomfortable songs. But yeah, winter still had a couple really, really good tracks that stuck in my head even like now. So overall, again, I think this is a fantastic project. To have that many great songs in one year was kind of crazy. Um, and the bonus tracks it's kind of a weird thing. There was one bonus track from each of the EPs, but they were only on the vinyl version. But you can actually listen to the demos of them online. But apparently people said the demos are pretty close to the final versions. So I got a general idea of what they were like, and they weren't bad. I think 2 of them sounded really cool and 2 of them didn't sound that cool. So again, just kind of a split down the middle for the bonus tracks. But in general, this just shot up really, really high really quickly for me. Just being that consistent, which is a thing they haven't done since White Album, I think. So yeah, it's a great set of releases for me.
I believe now it's apparent that we both have the same top 3.
It could be. Might
Yeah,
be in different order. We'll see.
we'll see. But now my third one is Everything Will Be All Right in the End.
Hmm.
You introduced me to this, and I know that I had the CD and everything, but
Hmm.
what did I miss? Why didn't I like it at first? I guess I was in a bad mood when I heard it or
It
something.
could be, yeah. I mean,
But
yeah.
yeah, so what about it then? I would say it's a great album, but not only just slightly worse. Not I wouldn't say worse, but slightly not as good.
Yeah.
And as Pinkerton or Blue. But after Death and Hurley, this is why I kind of didn't notice this. I thought Weezer was done, and I didn't
Yep.
notice this at first. I
Yeah.
still bought it, but I thought I was like almost giving up hope on Weezer in 2014 because of those 2 awful CDs. Not awful, but
Hmm.
at the time I thought they were, and I
Hmm.
was thinking, okay, they're just they lost their touch. It happens to everyone.
Hmm.
Eventually people just make bad music. I mean, I thought they've
Yeah.
reached that point, but no, not at all. So every song is good, but a few are among the best. I love that
Yes.
eulogy for a rock band. And you
Yep.
know how I was like, I can't believe there's a few of the same notes in that Sarah Paul in the Laura Palmer theme. It sounds
Yeah.
like,
I did not notice that. I kind of see what you were saying.
yeah.
It's interesting.
I like the British are coming. The only song I really don't like here is Da Vinci. Don't like it.
Really?
I don't like
That's
it.
one of my all-time favorites, actually.
I
But
just don't like it. I don't know what it is. Cleopatra is not that good either. 2 historical figures, I'd say.
yeah.
What they have in common is I don't like their song. And the 3 songs ending, oh God, The Wasteland, Anonymous, Return to
Oh
If.
yeah.
That 3-song suite there at the end,
Yeah. It's
amazing.
mind-blowing. It's so
Yeah,
good.
I love it.
Yeah. I was I was so blown away by that. And like they teased it a little bit before it came out. Rivers mentioned like he was going to have this big kind of epic like rock opera kind of thing going on and have like shredding guitars in it and just all kinds of different sounds. And I was like, oh man. And then like they released like a little tiny clip of it that was like a few seconds long. And I was just like, holy shit, I need to like hear this whole thing. And I was definitely not disappointed when it finally did come out. Like it was so good.
Yeah, very, very, very good. I love this, and Go Away. Oh my God, love
Oh
that
yeah.
song.
Yeah, you've
Quite
been talking about
possibly,
that a lot. Yeah.
quite possibly the best on there,
It's
except
so
for the
good. Yeah.
three-song ending. Go Away. I love the girl singing on that song, and so
Yeah.
much that I downloaded a CD from
The Best
from
Coast. Yeah.
yes, a CD from their
Yeah.
band, and it's pretty cool. I like it. It sounds like retro 50s kind of
Yeah.
doo-wop singing. I like
Yeah.
it.
And it reminds me of some of the songs from the B-sides from Pinkerton, where they had the girl from That Dog or the Rentals singing duet with Rivers. Like I think those are some of their coolest songs. And that song really brought me back to that feeling of like it just works so well having that dynamic of him singing with a girl, and like the way they go back and forth of singing with each other, but then they harmonize sometimes, and like
That
it's
song,
I yeah,
yeah. It's like,
it's
yeah,
so
they're
good.
telling a story, the boys version, the
Exactly.
girls version. I love it.
Yeah, yeah, it's
Mm.
so good.
And worst song here, like I said, okay, Da Vinci and Back to the Shack, and I would add Cleopatra. I don't like that one either very much.
Oh, I see.
So yeah, then this CD's top three. I mean that's how
Oh
good
yeah.
I like it.
Oh yeah.
Okay, your turn now.
Yep. So mine is the same. So um again, it was a huge comeback after a couple albums of just being pretty disappointing in general. They brought back Rico Kasich again to bring it back to what I feel is a pretty decent approximation of somewhere a little bit in between blue and green, where it's heavy as hell, but it's not like blowing your speakers out loud, which is an interesting mix of the sounds, but it works so well for the types of songs they have here. And it was unfortunately the last time he ever got to work with them before he passed away recently. It would have been kind of cool to have like, try another time to see if they could get like another great album out,
Yeah.
But they also worked closely with Daniel and Ryan from Ozma to record and write a lot of this album. Rivers said that even though Daniel and Ryan are only credited on one of the songs, Daniel was actually there for a lot of the writing process. Him and Rivers were getting together and recording little demos and song ideas. And if you actually go and get the demo pack that Rivers released on his website, like I was telling you about, from this album, it has a lot of those demos of him and Daniel playing together and writing together. So it's kind of interesting.
Yeah,
But
you always thought that Ozma and Weezer were almost like the same sound, and here they
yeah,
finally are, collaborating.
I know it was really cool to see that. And especially, yeah, Eulogy for the Rock Band is the one that the three of them wrote together, and I think has some of the most Ozma influence in it, especially because Daniel is big into
Peace.
music from other
Just kidding.
countries.
Just kidding.
What did you say?
I said, and when you said big into, and I said Twin Peaks. Just kidding. Just kidding.
Oh, I see. But yeah, he's yeah, he likes
Oh
to
yeah,
study music, and especially from other
Russian
cultures
music.
like
Yeah.
Russian, Latin, just all kinds of different sounds and things that he brings into his kind of writing repertoire. So yeah, that's a great song. I really love most of the songs here. It also had a complexity of the songwriting that I think Red and Green were kind of missing. So that's why I feel like this kind of goes above those as far as like some of their better albums. That yeah, it just, each song felt like it was a story and like had its own sound and its own feel. And again, I think the Future Scope trilogy is one of the best things they've ever done.
I would agree.
It's again, I play it on Rock Band all the time, and like I will just sit there and play it on repeat like a couple times even, like, and I think all put together it's like almost 8 minutes long, and it's just amazing all the way through. I think there's only two songs I don't really care for, which are Cleopatra and Foolish Father.
See,
Um,
okay, Cleopatra, you don't like that one either. I get it.
no, yeah, and Foolish Father just doesn't work for me. Like, I think like the chorus of Foolish Father like is almost good, but then it has this one chord change that just throws me off and makes me not like the song. It's really weird, but um, yeah, I think I really like it. Grew on me a lot. I've had it up to here. It took a while for me to kind of get around to it, but now I feel like it's one of my favorite songs on the album. And that was the one that was written with the guy from The Darkness. Um,
Oh,
and so I really like that song. But right from the get-go, I really loved Ain't Got Nobody, Eulogy for a Rock Band, Lonely Girl is another one I like a lot, which also sounds more like a Green Album song almost. It's just a very poppy, rocky, almost 1950s sounding kind of thing. Um, I really like Da Vinci, which is weird. You said you don't like it, but I really like the sound. I like that the chorus gets so heavy. It almost reminds me of like a Pork and Beans or Sweater Song, or just something where like when the chorus comes in, it's just it hits, and then the chorus is still emotional though. Like it's really, it feels like sweet and like almost like cute or something. I don't know how else to describe it, but like I just really like the sound of that song. And of course, Go Away is great. But
my favorite.
yeah, just all around was like the comeback I was hoping it would be after a pretty long lull of crap in
Oh
their
man,
discography.
they heard you.
So, I mean, I was pumped up for it from the beginning once they started talking about that Rick Ocasek was producing it, and just every little detail about this album that came out before it released was just like making me more and more excited. Like it was probably like one of the biggest like hype cycles of any album that I've ever been interested in. Like it was just like everything they talked about this album was like, oh my god, I can't wait to hear that. Like and it definitely paid off, I think. So yep, it's definitely
Masterpiece.
pretty high up there. Yep.
Okay, only got two left. I bet you know number two for me is Pinkerton.
Okay.
Just slightly less as good as the Blue album. Only, for maybe it's nostalgia. I don't know. Because I
Yeah.
remember the Blue album when it was new. This I did not hear when it was new.
Yeah, I think a
So
lot of people didn't.
yeah, it's the weird concept album. And I didn't hear this one until they recorded their third one when you said, "Did you know that they made a second one?" I was like,
Yeah.
"What?" No, man. I just know that they made the Buddy Holly one with the blue cover on it. And then you're
Yep.
like, "Nope, there's this thing called Pinkerton." I was like,
Uh-huh.
"What is that?" And then you said it's a weird story about like basically a girl from Japan and like,
Uh,
huh? Then I was like, okay, let me hear it. Um, and it's more honest lyrically than any other album is. As
yep.
in,
I think so,
Rivers
yeah.
is really embarrassed. He likes to kind of bury this one. He doesn't play songs from here live, really, at all.
Well, their live set list is a weird thing. I mean, they mix it up so much, and they have so many damn songs that I think it's hard to sometimes, you know, pin that down. But I'm glad I got to see them play the whole album live. That was a amazing
Yeah,
experience. Like
bucket list.
they just like it was so damn good from the very beginning to the end. um that was like one of my favorite shows I've ever been to, I think. um One of the few concerts where I think I actually like started tearing up like just because it was so emotional and so powerful
I
to
was like,
see it live. I was just like, oh man, it's so fucking awesome.
I never had that experience. The concert I went to, I don't think they played any songs here. I can't think of any. I don't remember,
Really?
but maybe one. I can't remember.
Huh.
Maybe I don't know. I can't even say, but I don't remember. At least there was not more than one, I think. I don't know. Maybe they played no other one or something. I don't know. And
Mm,
then so every song is great and not one bad song. It's really rare when that happens. Just God, man. And it's the last of the original lineup, if I'm not wrong.
that
And
is
Matt
true. Yep.
Sharp was on here, wasn't he?
Yes. Hmm.
Okay. So
Yep.
maybe that's why it's so good. I don't know. It's like the combination of the Rentals and Weezer. I don't know.
Yeah, because this is during that time when Matt was already starting to do stuff with the Rentals. He had already formed the Rentals
Yeah, they
before
started in
this.
95, I heard.
Right. So he had already been writing and kind of developing a lot of that sound. And the whole story of this album is so complex. Like I can talk about it a little bit more. But like basically they like re-recorded this album several times. They were changing the track list every time. Different band members were bringing in different elements to add in every time they would come back and re-record it, and like it changed forms so many times and had so many problems during the making of it that yeah, it's like by the time that I think this actually got made, um there was so much of the rental sound already in it, because Matt would just bring in the synthesizers and kind of be writing the songs with that in mind and stuff. So yeah, it just became such a crazy project. But
Yeah. Wow. But what a great album. And it's panned. You know, what I remember hearing is it's no one liked it, not even the critics.
mhm,
It's
yeah,
now a
yeah,
cult classic favorite and universally loved about anyone who's a Weezer fan.
yeah, I think it shows just how different our society and the music industry was back then. The fact that, you know, the record company didn't do it a very good job. They didn't even really let them tour for it. It was just a mess of a release. They didn't really get it, you know, any good marketing. But at the same time, the band members were already kind of like not really feeling it anymore. They were all kind of pissed off at Rivers. They all wanted to take a break and do other things. So it's a very, very complicated thing. The whole album and everything about it has a lot of ins and outs. But yeah, it's just crazy how much the opinion has changed of this
And
over time, just
basically,
because yeah, people see it in hindsight and they realize like yeah, and the other thing was I feel like what I've heard is a lot of people just like they wanted it to be exactly like Blue, but it's almost nothing like Blue. It's
nothing.
such a different sound, like in every way.
Well, the major failure of this album was what caused Rivers to like quit and just
Yeah,
go back to college, try something
yes,
else for a while,
right.
and then he was really discouraged. So
Yeah, yep.
that's why it's been 5 years until the next one.
Yeah.
So else, is there anything bad about this? Is there? Can you think of anything?
No, not
No,
really.
I can't either. Overall, only a tiny bit. I wouldn't say worse because that means it
Yeah,
sounds like it's bad. Only a tiny bit less awesome than the blue one to me.
yeah.
So your turn. Which one do you have as number two?
Um, for me, it is also Pinkerton.
Okay.
Yeah, I really like that it went back to, well, not went back to, but it went into a very, very dark, raw kind of sound. Um, it all sounds sad and dark and like somber and like emotional. Um, and again, like I think the only thing that you can say that makes it lesser than Blue is just that it's not as groundbreaking, I guess. And like in a way it is, but at the same time, it's not as big of a combination of sounds as Blue was. Blue was just like a combination of so many different elements that no one had ever heard put together before. And it was just became this kind of whole new sound that people could imagine music could sound like. But with Pinkerton, it just went into a very dark place that I guess other like grunge music or, you know, just other kinds of like late 80s, early 90s kind of pop or rock artists had just kind of touched on. But the fact that this is so personal, it makes it have a whole different character to it. Like, you know, it's almost like a reading a diary of someone who's exposing all of their deepest fears and regrets
Oh
and
yeah.
like and it's all just right there in the
Now,
songwriting.
if you told that to people that you don't know and everyone knew it, you'd be embarrassed too, right?
Yeah, it's like the whole thing is just him talking about what he's feeling, which is like what art is supposed to be, you know, like, but doing it in a much more blunt way than he ever had before, where it was just like he was telling the story as it is. Like, sure, there were metaphors and made it to rhyme, but at the same time, it was almost like listening to somebody telling you a story about their life, you know. And very heartbreaking. That was one of the words I would use to describe it. It's like you listen to it and you can feel like the pain, basically, like that he was feeling. And yeah, again, much more of a punk metal grunge kind of sound as far as the guitars and the aesthetics of the sound goes. And it was also, again, got into those more honest, kind of self-deprecating and even funny lyrics at certain times.
Yeah.
Where again, like he insults himself several times in those lyrics. He's like, I'm an idiot, I'm a loser, you know, like but and I think that that was a turning point that most people weren't expecting from the rock world in the 90s all that much. But yeah, I think it worked in its favor. There definitely are no bad songs. And
No,
I think the deluxe edition has some of the best songs they've ever recorded,
finally got that a few,
which
maybe a year or two ago.
it is funny and goes back into the story of how it was made, because originally this was supposed to be a completely different album. It was supposed to be the Songs from the Black Hole, which was this rock opera that Rivers was writing that had like 30 songs on it, and it was like something that you would actually there were songs that were like 30 seconds long, but it was like where each song was telling a part of a story, like a continuing story. You know, they had a beginning, a middle, and end. But as it went on, none of the other members were very happy about that. The record company definitely wasn't happy about that, but he had already done so much work on writing those songs and recording demos for all those songs. And that pissed him off a lot. It made him sad. It made him start regressing a bit. And essentially, in the end, they had to scrap that entire idea of Songs from the Black Hole, and just kind of try to make it a little more commercial in that sense, I guess, to cut out the songs that were very specifically characters talking to other characters or those kind of things. And but a lot of the songs that were recorded to be used on Songs from the Black Hole are the ones that are on that deluxe edition and also on his Alone albums,
Go
to the
back and
point
listen.
where fans have actually gone back and reconstructed what Songs from the Black Hole would have sounded like based on a lot of Rivers like journals and writings that he's done, that talked about even what order the track lists would be in. And then the fact that he's released the demos or the recordings of so many of those songs in the deluxe edition of Pinkerton or in those Alone albums or somewhere else, like people have been able to like put it back together almost to hear what Songs from the Black Hole would have been. And that's been something that I've like studied a lot, I guess.
It's
Like I've
kind of like
researched.
Smile from the Beach Boys.
Yeah, kind of. And that's just something I've delved into a lot, and it's interesting to research. And then there's also a project from the early 2010s where this guy basically took the whole like track listing and everything of Songs from the Black Hole and re-recorded it in the studio to basically make it like what it would have sounded like if it got proper studio recordings and everything. And that was really cool too. I think it's called Operation Space Opera, if I remember correctly, but it's really, really cool. Because some of the Pinkerton songs are in that track list, but they've been changed around or some of the lyrics were changed and stuff like that. But yeah, just a great album. Like the B-sides, especially like You Gave Your Love to Me Softly. It's oddly one of their like most famous songs, even though it's a B-side. I think it got released on like a single or something like that from Pinkerton, and everyone just fell in love with it. Devotion is amazing. Waiting on You. And then I Just Threw Out the Love of My Dreams is the one I was talking about, that's a duet with the girl from That Dog and The Rentals.
Okay.
So there's just so much of the unreleased songs from Pinkerton, I think, that even make this album more interesting in a certain way, when you learn the whole story and kind of like how it came to be. But yeah, definitely a very important album for
Yeah.
me in general. And obviously it's come to be an important album for them, even though it wasn't at the time. But yeah, definitely one of my favorite albums. Definitely up there in the pantheon, in the highest. But yeah, and then we'll move on to your number one, which of
Yeah.
course we know
Of
what it
course,
is, but
everyone knows.
we'll see what you have to say.
Everyone, and yep, and what can be said that hasn't already been said, but
Mhm.
we go ahead and show you what I think the absolute best number one.
Mhm.
Everyone knows is this. There's some argument you could say Pinkerton is better, but to
Yeah,
me, I
it's a
liked
close
it.
call.
This is a monster debut, and I was a kid, man. I was watching it
Oh
TV
yeah.
age 10 or 11 whenever
Hmm.
this happened.
Yep.
I was thinking, wow, they got Happy Days. How'd they do that?
Yeah,
Been off for about
that
20
video.
years.
Hmm.
I didn't know how that worked. So every song's amazing. Every song.
Yep.
You could sing every lyric. You probably memorized the whole album.
Yep.
Um, Everyone has, and everyone who's a Weezer fan got Dusty Gems and Raw Nuggets too. Just
Yeah.
that kind of thing that was kind of like the companion to this.
Yeah.
Um, and this was the CD of my preteen years that I remember the
Mm.
most, other than maybe Green Day Dookie, because it was like
Mm.
number one and two for me. This, and I didn't know which one was number one and which one was number two, but this was there, this right up there.
Oh yeah.
When I was a kid in fourth, fifth, sixth grade, this was it. I loved it. Um, so yeah, Rick Ocasek produced it. It's maybe that's why it's so good. I don't know. But everything he had produced with Weezer has been pretty top tier.
Hmm.
Maybe not the green one as much, but
Yeah,
definitely
but still, yeah.
the brown one, everything's all right in the end.
Hmm.
This and that, God,
Hmm.
he was something. And of
Yep.
course, the Buddy Holly video, it even came with like Windows startup or something. I
That's
can't,
right. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. Um, I just loved it. And my favorite song here, I can't even say. Sometimes I think it's In the Garage.
It's a great
Sometimes I
one.
think it's The World Has Turned and Left Me Here.
Yep.
Sometimes I think it's No One Else.
Yep.
I love those songs.
Yep.
I
Yeah.
don't like
It's
My Name Is Jonas as much as those other songs. They
really.
weren't singles. The
Huh.
World Is, yeah, Buddy Holly is not even as good as those songs I've said.
Yeah.
Really the only song that I think might be kind of boring is Surf Wax America, and Only in Dreams is maybe a little too long sometimes.
Really.
Listen to the whole thing, 8
Uh,
minutes, but Surf Wax in America and Only in Dreams are the only two sometimes that I want to skip. Sometimes, not all the time. Sometimes I'll
mm,
listen to all of it, but yes, this is amazing. One of the
mhm.
top albums of my whole collection. If I had to go to a desert island and take 5 CDs only, this would be one of them for sure.
Yep.
And that's all I have to say. Now, what do you got to say about it?
Let's see. So again, similar for me, it came out when I was either 10 or 11, and it just hit me. Like there was something about the sound, and I mean, obviously the music video was fun, and we all saw it on MTV. But after that, my cousin Fred got the CD, and we were listening to it in his car, and I was just like, this is so fucking good. Like it's not just Buddy Holly that's good, like all of this is good. And I think it was still at a time when I hadn't even quite grasped as a music lover, like that whole idea that like, most people hear the singles from an album, but a lot of times the album tracks that are aside from those are the even better than the singles.
Yes.
It was just something that when you're growing up, you don't realize that like you're just like, oh well, that's the popular song for a reason. Obviously, it's just because that's the best song, but that's not the case. Obviously.
Not
Um,
always.
and this was I think one of the first albums that made me realize that, along with later on, I think stuff like, like Alanis Morissette, Jagged Little Pill, just like there's a couple albums that stand out to me to where I liked the songs that weren't singles way more than the popular songs. Like, but I guess that represents a certain kind of coming of age, I guess, but not in the traditional sense of saying that like it taught me life lessons or like stupid shit like that. Just musically, it
Yeah.
taught me things about music and how to appreciate music. And like I said here, it was just this amazing combination of music that no one had even heard of or thought could be combined, but they did it. Like it had the elements of grunge, it had late 80s metal, it had pop, it had pre-1970s music, especially Beach Boys type sounds, the 80s pop rock kind of sound with the synths and stuff that almost kind of sounded like the Cars, which is not surprising, because of Rick
Yeah.
Ocasek, and barbershop quartet music. Like this album brought so many musical influences into one piece of music that especially for its time, like there was just nothing like it. Of course, there's been a lot of things that have imitated it or done similar things, but this was definitely pioneering in that sense. And again, going back to the production, just the way that everything was mixed, again, it was like even louder and heavier than like something like Nirvana, which a lot of people thought was like the heaviest thing ever back then, that that wasn't death metal or some crazy shit that nobody wanted to listen to.
Mhm.
But yet it had this pop music element at the same time. And I think that just really resonated with a lot of people our age or maybe a little older than us. Like there was just something about it that just didn't sound or feel like anything else. The Again, songwriting's all great, no bad songs. There's not a single one I think is even lesser than the others. Maybe just by like the tiniest bit. Like I think I think My Name Is Jonas is probably my favorite. It's just one that there's just something about the melody and the way it's written. I just love it to death. But Holiday is probably one of my other favorites. It's just, again, it has that 1950s 1960s sound to it, but it's so heavy and fun. And yeah, I like every second of it. I There's not a song I skip.
Like I
And
said,
it also had a lot of those really complex vocal harmonies and stuff like that, which they became super famous for, basically. And yet none of their albums ever really captured that same
no,
thing
no, no.
again.
Yeah, right.
Even though Pinkerton had a little bit of that, and again, like I heard it on some of the Seasons records, or you'll hear Van Weezer as well. Like you'll hear elements of the vocal layering, but never the way it was on this album. And
Maybe
this one,
it's that charm.
they were literally singing barbershop quartet harmonies that
Mhm,
had four
mhm.
parts, and each of them would actually sing it. And they were like practicing these crazy complex vocal harmonies while they were rehearsing in the studio and stuff. So I think all of
Yeah,
that comes
they,
through. You
my
hear it when you
Eveline,
listen to it. Yeah.
even though it's not on here, but
Yeah. And you hear that when you listen to it, like that the effort that they put into it
and
is
just
like
think
you can hear it.
they had 4 songs that are top-notch Weezer. They didn't even put on here. They could
Oh
have
yeah.
fit 4 more songs. Michael and
Yeah.
Carly, Suzanne, My Eveline, and Jamie, right? Couldn't they
Oh
have
yeah.
put that there?
Yeah, those four easily like were as good as anything on the album. And yeah, they're on the deluxe edition, but like I think those are some of their best songs. Like they're just so
Yeah.
good. And again, don't exactly know why they were removed. Well, I've heard
Yeah.
there's some rumor that Jamie was because he mentions famous rock stars in the title, and there was legal implications and all that. But especially Suzanne and Michael and Carly, those are as classic Weezer as it gets. They're just not on the original track list, unfortunately.
I
But
can understand Jamie. Yes, I can see he mentions Guns N' Roses people in there.
or
Um,
Kurt Cobain in the early versions. So they had different lyrics in the demo version, but it's just
they're
yeah.
notorious, copyright people. Oh shit! Whoops, didn't mean to do that, but it fits.
But yeah, so yeah, just really nothing bad to say about it. It just grows on me with time. It's never lost any of its appeal. It's never lost any of its originality. It just feels as good to listen to now as it did however many 25 years ago, 27 years ago.
So long.
But yeah, it's like I said, it stuck with me, and ever since I first heard it in my cousin's car, I was just like,
You
yeah,
know what?
this is something special.
I bet, if this never came out, what would my musical taste be now? It would not be the same, not at
Oh
all.
yeah, no, for sure.
It was at that formative year. Um, this came out right at the time I was developing my taste in music, and
Yeah,
this guided
yeah.
me along.
And again, the fact that it combined so many things that it's almost like it was bridging a gap between something like stuff our parents listened to and what we were listening to, like it was like combining Nirvana with the Beach Boys, like which was just a thing that was so
Diametrically
cool.
opposed.
And yeah, like it was so unheard of, but yet it worked. Like I think there was even a point where, you know, um, when I was making music with our band that sounded like Weezer, I would, I guess, when I was writing stuff, I would kind of mix in more of the 1950s, 1960s elements, even than like Weezer did to a certain extent. Um, and I feel like that even in like being able to like hone into that part of their sound, it made me realize how great a lot of that old music was, to the point where like I was even playing our demo tapes that we were making for our band. I would play it for my dad and he actually got it. Like
There you go.
he like he got that I was putting those influences into the music, and it like made sense to him on some level, even though it was, heavier than anything he was used to. I feel like it somehow bridged that gap, that like older people could even understand those elements of it, and it came through in the music. So yeah, it's so yeah, groundbreaking and just important for a lot of us. Yeah.
Of course. And I got just one more thing, just a list of my best to worst here.
uh
Just show that first. Oh yeah. Oh, so go ahead and tell your summary then.
well, yeah, I just wrote a stupid little summary here, but it's just like one of those things where the discography is fairly lopsided. Those top
Of course.
7 or 8 albums are like miles above everything else for the most part. But again, the good ones are some of my favorite albums of all time and some of the most important albums, I think. But in the chronological order that they were released, it feels like a roller coaster. It's just constantly going down to the worst shit ever and then coming up to like, oh my god, this is amazing, oh shit, this is crap. Like, and it just kind of goes up and down, and it's just been a crazy ride following them for 30 years, and just
We love them.
being along for the ride. And yeah, and again, it doesn't mean you can't be critical of them just because you love them. It's just it's been a crazy thing to follow and been with us for a long time.
They got me for life, but I also can choose to not like some of their things.
Exactly. Yep. So yeah, that's
One more slide for me just to show you basically a summary, but on rankings. So look, I say black is excellent. Red is very good. Green is pretty good. Orange is average. Purple is bad, and blue is terrible.
yeah.
Only one got that category.
Yeah, again, my ranking's not super far off from that, and that makes sense.
Yeah. Well,
It's a little
we've heard the
closer.
same things.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little closer in ranking than I thought it would be, but I'm glad that there are those differences, that it's clear that we all can also appreciate different elements of their music. We don't all have to like the exact same songs or the exact same, elements. And I think it just, yeah. And the more you listen to things, these might change, and, it's just interesting to rank things like this that, so well, I guess, and you can kind of compare with other people. So it was pretty fun to go back to a lot of these and try to
Yeah.
let's say logically place them amongst each other. It makes you think more about what is it that you truly do appreciate about these. What is it that makes one better than the other for you? Is it just the number of good songs, or is it how good some of those songs are? Like what, it just makes you think about those things. And it's I think it's good for everyone to think about your musical taste more often.
Yeah.
Let's say.
So I'll try to do this again if you can if we can agree on a topic. I had fun. How about
Yeah,
you?
we'll think about something, and hopefully someone with a smaller discography.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Because
This took a little
this was
longer
a
than I thought it
huge,
would
yeah,
be, but hey, I mean,
yeah,
we tackled a huge one first. That's fine.
yeah. This was a very big undertaking.
I thought it would be at least an hour, two at the most, but here we
Yeah,
are 3 hours later.
yeah. This tends to be a lot of conversations I have nowadays, like that. Yeah, it's hard to keep things under like 2.5 hours at this point, like just because there's so much to talk about. And
Yeah,
um,
we
but yeah,
gotta narrow something down a little more. I don't
but yeah,
know.
we'll
But I
talk
had
about it.
fun. Like to hell, I just think a lot of people are going to see the length and say, "No, I don't want to hear that." But no
But
one's
yeah,
even going to hear it anyway. Let's be honest.
yeah, and at the same time, I mean, even if it's just our family and friends who listen to it or whatever, it's like, who cares? Like that's,
Yeah.
as long as they get it, they get something out of it. I
It
mean,
just L is fast forward 10
yep.
seconds. Right key is 5 seconds.
Yep.
You know,
Yep.
if you
But
don't
yeah,
like what we're saying.
yeah, we'll try and figure something out and possibly do it again. But it was a long time coming for me to revisit some of these. So
Yeah, I had
it
so
was a
much.
good kick in the ass to do that finally.
Yeah, I've been meaning to do it as well, and finally, think what I think about these things. Make sure I know what I'm thinking.
Yeah, especially as you learn more about music, I think you're gonna also see or hear new things as you go through it too. So that can change.
Yeah, so I'll upload this. You're fine with that, right? You're not
Yeah,
embarrassed, right?
yeah. Like I said, I've done several of these things before that were on like decently popular podcasts or channels or whatever. So
All right,
no
man.
shame to me. All right.
Had a great time doing
Okay.
this.
Yep.
Thank you.
We'll talk soon, and we'll see. Let me know when you post it, and we'll
I will.
see how it goes.
All right, man.
All right. Talk to you later.
Bye.
Bye.